Frank?
Yes, we do.
Yes. We're gonna take Brad Washburn quickly. Who's here, so we just start out with Brad.
Yep.
Under agent's report.
Okay. And then anything else to, and then I think we're going to switch around order conditions. We'll get those out of the way and then move to the RDA for Hadley Country Club. All right. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for taking me out of order. I appreciate it. And we'll just take a few moments of your time.
That's how you pull your rank, Brad.
Yeah. Thanks. So two things. So I'm here before you tonight to ask for two letters of support. One would be for the long-awaited open space and recreation plan that we are like inches away from the finish line. But I'm coordinating with the contractor, VHB, to get some attachments and some maps made and some other kind of final formatting type stuff. So I'm just going now before the commission, Board of Selectmen, Planning Board, and CPC to ask for letters of support. So unfortunately, given the kind of timing and the craziness of last week, I don't have a draft letter before you, but can work with Amy to get something for your signature if you could just agree in concept to support the submission of the plan to the state. Again, we'll provide some kind of template language for you guys to review and mark up as you see fit.
I know Patty's spent a fair amount of time working towards that. Do you have any thoughts or anything you want to add to?
No, I gave everything I needed to Brad, and it looks really, really good.
That's great.
I'm very excited.
Do you know if there's any word, I was talking to Nancy Fairfield a little bit about funds, if we were to be pursuing any more open space to purchase? I know part of having a good open space plan in place bodes well for any other grants or?
Yeah, for a lot of the state grants, this is actually a requisite, so you would need this for a land grant, a park grant,
Yep.
any of the grants that EEA or DCS provide. So not only do we want it, but we do need this in place. Yep.
For sure.
Yeah.
Anybody else have
That's
any
great.
questions? We can pull together what we need.
Yeah.
We absolutely critical for this commission, so
Great.
certainly appreciate you bringing this together. I know it's been a while. So.
Yeah, no, and obviously appreciate your efforts. I know a lot of good work went into this before I came and just did the last few things on it, but appreciate everything, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will definitely give you that.
Okay, great.
And what was the other?
The second is a grant application that we'll be submitting in the next 2 weeks to the State Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. If you remember, Nancy helped shepherd through our municipal vulnerability preparedness plan, and it's called Building a Resilient Scituate. It's on our website. And this is the town's climate adaptation and resilience kind of master plan, if you will. It's not a requirement of the state, but it's a requirement to apply for a lot of the grant programs. Different grant programs than the ones that the open space and rec plan kind of opens doors to, but this is a prerequisite for a lot of other grant programs. So we were one of the first coastal municipalities to have an MVP plan in place, and they actually just opened what's called an MVP action grant round. So you're actually able to apply for a grant to do things that you want to, that you called out in your kind of MVP master plan. And what we would be applying for, so in the plan, if you look towards the back, there's actually 3 climate action goals, which are broad categories of kind of follow-up actions that we're planning to do. One was to focus on our coastal business districts and think about, have conversations and do planning exercises to figure out how we make the waterfront more resilient in the long term. The second was to look at our municipal infrastructure and talk about resiliency for those items. And the third was to just have a kind of broad discussion with residents in general about climate change, resiliency, et cetera. So we're going to go after money to look at our wastewater facility, not just the plant itself, but our pump stations, pipes in the ground, kind of look at a holistic, maybe 10,000-foot kind of look at our facilities, and probably go into like concept level recommendations for each. facility, or for each piece of the wastewater facility. And then the idea would be in a future follow-up grant to kind of get down to like engineering and design for a particular piece, whether it be the treatment plant or a pump station. So again, this is the kind of, this was very broad brush in the MVP plan. We're taking it, in this grant, we'd be taking it to the next step, and then in future rounds, we'd be going for kind of, engineering level documents.
Brad, will this help as well if they're eventually going towards foreshore protection or anything like that? Will this help us in any way securing any of those funds? I know Nancy's been after some of those. Does that help us at all?
It does. Again, the MVP is a new program that the state just kind of kicked off last year, and it's going to be a requisite for a lot of those coastal protection grant programs. So again, something that you want and something that you're going to need.
So he's looking for a letter?
Another letter that I will get you a draft. Again, I apologize for not having it before you tonight, but I'll work on it.
Sure. Any thoughts or questions on that?
No, sounds like positive things. The more grants we get, the more things we can fix.
Yeah, and just before I came in here, I was actually writing an email to the gentleman that we're having a consultant help us put the application together, and would be, working with us if we were to get the grant. So, next time I see you folks, or if I see you on the streets, I can tell you exactly, give you a better idea of exactly the project scope and cost and all that good stuff.
Okay. Well, again, I don't see, we would definitely support that. And
No problem.
work with you and get a couple of letters out.
Great.
Go for it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate your time
Thanks for
coming
coming
in.
in.
Appreciate it, Brad.
Thanks, Brad.
What is the conditions? Town of Scituate Bailey's Causeway, replace the culvert. Do we have anything extraordinary?
No, those were standard
They
orders.
were standard, they were very good. I make a motion that we accept the orders of conditions for the town of Scituate for Bailey's Causeway as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Town of Scituate DPW Gilson Road, replace culvert.
I make a motion that we accept those orders of conditions as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. And then Diamond Development, 53 Border Street, raise old, rebuild new dwelling.
Did you want to say something on that?
No, it would be the standard order with the special conditions that we discussed, so.
Because I think they're gonna owe us a plan for vegetation.
Right.
So
Well, we have one.
the way we talked about handling that was going to be, have a special condition requiring the planting plan, and then what we'll do is take that up at a meeting, the acceptance of that plan.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm just adding in about the holly tree in the orders of condition. There's a magnificent holly tree there that cannot be removed.
Okay.
So I make a motion to accept the orders as written.
Just on that.
Yeah.
So I know we've had a little bit of back and forth about
Right.
revegetation. And what the way that this is written, we decide that and we give it to the applicant and they have to agree to that. And if they don't, then their recourse would be,
Appeal.
okay.
Right, we've done this before, like subject to
Yeah,
a
plan.
satisfactory
Right.
plan that the commission and the agent are.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Somebody want to second it?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Okay. So now we have Hadley Country Club, 667 Hadley Road. On May 7th, 2018, during the 6:15 meeting at Town Hall, Conservation Commission will act on the request of Hadley Country Club for determination of applicability to the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Scituate Wetlands Bylaws to install a replacement irrigation system on property located at 667 Hadley Road, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Good evening.
Good evening. Bill Orenberger, I'm here tonight, I just want to introduce you. This is Rich Cahy, longtime Port Superintendent of Hadley. And I also have from Irrigation Consulting, Inc., I have Brian Vinchese and Justin Montini here. And I'm going to let Brian make a presentation, but in essence, the opportunity is an old, as you read in the in the narrative. It's a chance to put in, replace an antiquated system and make it much more efficient and water-wise and otherwise. So, Brian,
Have you been to Scituate before, Brian?
No, but my sister
I
has.
know. Just wondered what your opinion was of some of that.
Matter of fact, I said as I came in, I'd never been to her office, so it's no longer here, but I did see her yesterday, so.
Okay.
How's she
Which,
doing?
she's doing just fine. She's only working about 20 hours a week, hunting around, not doing much,
She
so.
doesn't know what to do with herself.
Exactly, so.
Good for her.
So she's,
Wish her best from us.
I hadn't seen her for a while, so it was good to see her yesterday, so. So we're replacing the irrigation system, which, depending on what part of it you look at, is 24 to 26 years old. It's an old system, relatively inefficient. From an environmental standpoint, we have 4 areas of concern. There's a perennial stream that comes from the pond that runs through the golf course in places, mostly on hole number 11. And we're going to cross that in 3 places. We propose to do that with a directional bore, so we won't be digging through the stream, it all will go under it. We'll put a wattle between the machine and the stream while we're doing it. The 3 of them will be done in less than a day. We also have a crossing on number 16 where there's an existing long bridge. That is crossed now by the pipe just going over the bridge. The pipe that goes over the bridge is too small for the replacement system, so we're going to replace that pipe with a larger pipe, but it goes on exactly the same support structure that is already existing, so we're not even messing with the bridge at all. We are, however, doing a considerable amount of work in the buffer of both the saltwater wetland and the freshwater wetlands. That work, however, is all in maintained turf. None of it is in anything but maintained turf. So what Rich mows is where we'll be going with that. Can you flip that over? So,
We can
go ahead.
get that up any higher.
Justin, be happy to hold it for you. So, but we're actually going to go to the second sheet, which has the pictures on it, so I can explain to them. So, if you've never seen a golf course irrigation
You can put that one on the easel, that's fine. It just was hard to see the bottom.
a golf course irrigation system, we put pipe in 2 ways. We trench in the pipe for the bigger pipe, 3 inches and above, and we pull in the pipe that is 2.5 inches and smaller. So when we trench, we have a limit to the contractor of 250 feet sod to sod. So they strip the sod, they dig the trench, they put in the pipe, they compact and backfill it and put the sod back, and that is a very efficient process, and as I said, per the specifications, they're limited to 250 feet to do that.
You say 250 feet.
250 feet of linear trench. Okay, that can be open at one time. They'll do a couple of thousand feet a day with it if they're, depending on the soil conditions. But if you look at the top left picture, that's the machine they used to do that. The one to the right shows the trench, the compaction, then they clean it, and then that's what it looks like on the bottom left picture when they're done. You have to have a pretty good eye to tell where they've been, especially if it rains afterwards or they irrigate afterwards, because it goes away pretty quick. The pulling's a little different. They use a machine that slits the turf and pulls the pipe in underneath it. You do it on home lawns too. Golf, it's a little bigger machine. And then if you look at the picture all the way to the right, that's what it looks like it's done. You'd be hard-pressed to go out the next day and tell where they put in the pipe with a good contractor, and we have a very good contractor doing this project. Below is just the details for the bores, the directional bores, and then the trenching. But it's a very fluid process with very little environmental disturbance because it's very strict on how it can be put in. But it's really the 3 bores that are the main concern, and then the bridge crossing, but again, the bridge crossing's already there, so we're not really disturbing the bridge. So,
And it's throughout the whole course.
throughout all 18 holes. So when you, as you know, the 2 9s are somewhat separated, so we're actually having to go right down the cart path, and we're crossing the road, the main road there,
They have to dig up the street.
Yes, so there'll be a permit to dig up the street, because a little too rocky there to bore it.
It's too bad.
Plus, and there's also no room on either side to get the machine. If you bored it, you have to go all the way back to the golf course, and going through rock with a bore can be relatively difficult, so it'll all be trenched.
And is that the crossing at Gannett Road, that's part of this filing as well?
It wouldn't be under Concom, would it? I know we have,
I think there's a
There is a
wetlands pretty
wetlands.
close to all that.
okay.
so.
Yeah, so it'd be part of that,
Yes.
right. And we're going actually right under the cart path because there's no place else to go.
Sure.
So, there's a lot of high voltage there also that we're
Yeah.
having to avoid. So,
I hope.
they'll do a good job of avoiding it. They don't like to hit it.
I
So-
don't have any questions.
I don't
No
either.
questions.
Do you, will you remove the existing pipe? Will it be in the same
No,
area?
it's actually, right now, it's down the middle of the fairway. All the newer replacement pipe is on the side of the fairway, so that you don't disturb the fairway if something goes wrong. And the existing, we remove everything you can see. Anything below grade stays below grade.
Lisa?
No, I don't have any questions.
Amy?
No, I mean, it appears to meet the requirements of a negative determination.
So all the construction will be either in the fairways, as you point out, it could be in the buffer zone, but it's all in a disturbed area.
Well, it's all an existing maintained turf,
Even
so,
though it's a buffer.
yes, but it's in the buffer of the...
Historic use.
Right, yes.
All right. And then just, for instance, with the borings, I mean, we're in New England, so
Mhm.
a lot of rocks and stuff like that.
Well, where these three bores are, is the part of the golf course that is not rocky.
Okay.
So it should be pretty easy there. Otherwise, we would have asked to trench it and pump around, but there should be no rock in the three places we're going.
So there's no erosion control because everything's going right back?
Right, well, we'll put a wattle between, when they're doing the boring, we'll put a wattle between the perennial stream and the machine. The machine won't be right on the stream, it'll be good 30 feet or so back. So there's an entry hole and an exit hole. And so, just in case they get any slurry moving, we want to make sure there's a wattle there to catch it.
Anybody in the audience?
I make a motion for a -3.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you very much.
-3 is good.
Thank you.
That's what you want. You don't want a positive.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
As an aside, this is the first step. We'll be back in the next couple months because this is all part of a larger water preservation project, and we're going to be back for the file an NOI, having to do with larger ponds. We're going to capture and recharge a lot of water in the course, but that is something that'll be a separate filing. And this is much more efficient and saves a lot of water. That's the whole.
Good news.
Thank you. Good night.
Good
night.
Jacob Hatch, Commando Scanzillo, request for continuation.
Yep.
You want to go till the 21st?
Yep, I make a motion to continue to pass 10 New Driftway to 6/20, May 21st.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Martin, 67 Border Street.
Hi, Bill Arnberger. I'm here. Peter Martin's with me tonight, and Paul Marabito.
Good evening.
Hey.
And Paul, you can make, we understand that John Chessie is still reviewing some of the calculations with this, but what we wanted to achieve to make sure everyone was on the same page. Paul there's a little movement of the cul-de-sac on this driveway. Paul will explain that.
This is the site plan that you've been looking at for the last 3 or 4 months. We have finished the review with Lucas Environmental, and from there, the commission engaged John Chessier to review the stormwater. We had a site meeting with him and Frank and Amy a week ago last Friday. And what came out of that were a few things we'd like to talk about. One was, it was decided to move the proposed cul-de-sac that's in green here, to move it over approximately an average of 6 feet. This line here is the former retaining wall. That'll be moved to this location. It'll be a straight line starting at the house where it did before. It'll join up the wall that was proposed in this area here. The reason for that is to try to save a tree that's in this area here, but also eliminate any need to chip away some of the ledge on this very high peak, which is used as a backdrop for the waterfall in the pond there. There are no changes to the elevations for the roadway, and the reason being is that the elevation of the road in this area here, the circle, is all predicated upon the grading for the house and the garage. The slope of the driveway coming up is the same. Instead of a curved wall, it will be a straight wall. And again, the only change is from here to the house and this area in here, and we would be moving off the ledge. While we were out there, one of the things we talked about was, in our stormwater calculations, one of the standards for review under the stormwater bylaw, the town of Scituate stormwater bylaw, is that if it was determined that there was an increase in the peak rate of runoff from the site, that the commission can waive any mitigation for that in a situation where the water goes out into the existing tidal area, which is around 3 sides of it. John Chessier wrote a memo the following Monday where he was in agreement with that, but we would like to get the concurrence of the Conservation Commission. We don't believe that he is anywhere close to needing that, and we base that upon the stormwater calculations that we've already prepared. You know, the scales are really tipped in the direction of not needing that. That's one thing. The other thing was, and we spoke about this at the last time we met with the commission, I think it was April 11th or 13th, Lucas Environmental was hired to review all the environmental aspects of the project, including the wetland delineations, and also to review the work we were proposing under the riverfront regulations, which is a part of the stormwater. We added 2 additional sheets to this set based upon his request that we perform a whole bunch of calculations showing how we arrived at existing and proposed conditions under the river front regulations. That took an awful lot of work. We did review these numbers. We had a meeting here on March 21st during the day, and he was in agreement with everything. But he said make the changes on the plan, and he would write a letter supporting the project. The letter he did send was, he asked us to further supplement our reasons why we met performance standards for doing work on and near the coastal bank, which they did do. And we'd already discussed that during our review with them, but we put that in writing. The other thing was that he was asking that whoever did the stormwater work, that they review the calculations we did for him on the riverfront. And we've objected to that. We still object to it. And when I left the meeting last time, I was under the clear understanding that a peer review for stormwater would not have to do that. John was instructed to review those a few days later in an email from the commission. And what we're asking for this evening is that John be given a very clear direction on that. I spoke to John Friday, and he said he still doesn't have a clear direction on whether or not he needs to review the stormwater calculations. The purpose of the work from the consultant is to review the work. We had to redo everything for Lucas Environmental. We don't want to, and we're not going to redo all this work for the stormwater review. It is a review. All those numbers that were done for the riverfront were part of the wetlands review. The stormwater, the purpose of the stormwater is to determine whether or not we meet the parameters and thresholds of the town of Scituate stormwater regulations. And at the last meeting, I had shown you the summary sheets of our stormwater calculations that clearly indicated we weren't even close to tripping the thresholds. And the main reason is that we have less impervious area with a proposed design. Usually when you have less pavement, less roof area, you would have less water leaving the site. So it's kind of a no-brainer, but we would ask the commission that they do instruct John that he does not have to review the work that was done by Lucas going through those calculations. There was a lot of work on our part that the client had to pay for, and we don't think he should have to pay to mix apples and oranges with a review under Wetlands Act versus stormwater. So I think that's all I have.
Okay.
Oh, and one other thing, I did give John a copy of this plan, the color plan. He didn't have any issues with it. He didn't think it was gonna change anything from his end.
Is that the plan we were sent today?
Yes.
Today?
Yes.
Okay.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, I
That's my
put this
computer.
together Friday.
Yeah, it is.
And I put it in an email to you.
No, that's all, I just wanted to know,
Yeah.
we're talking the same.
That's a pretty simple change.
Richard?
I think the change is beneficial. I have no question about that. I'm a little confused on your question about the stormwater calculation and the need, and I'd have to defer to Amy to say if there is a need or if we should just go along with that.
Well, I think I'm confused too
Okay.
about what you said, but, so maybe we should.
Well, and again, Lucas Environmental has already reviewed everything and has approved everything but for the stormwater calculations, which they're reviewing presently. And all we're saying is, well, at the end, Tom Liddy, and I actually personally met him 3 times, everything was copacetic, and kind of in the 11th hour, Martin's already paid one consultant review it, has approved it, and I just don't want to get into the battle of consultants. And so I understand John Chessier is finishing the calculation, stormwater review, which is like a phone book here. And we just want to make it clear, because it's unclear in his mind, that is the limit of the scope of what he's doing. If he reports back saying our stormwater calculations, he concurs with them, then we'd like to be able to have this voted and closed and voted.
But so I think we were talking about 2 different things though, because, so Chessier is looking at the stormwater, and what Tom Liddy, his comment, that he had several comments in the letter, if you refer back to his last comment letter, he was looking just to have a second set of eyes on not the stormwater, but on the redevelopment riverfront numbers, which are derived from, there's a table, you know what I mean? So he thought it was, I don't know, there's overlap, I guess, there from an engineering standpoint. And I did reach out to him and ask for clarification to make sure that we were talking about the same thing, and he verified that, so.
Well, the only commentary I'd have to that is, and again, I don't mean to be reiterative, over the past 3 meetings, we got into a big debate over consulting, additional needed consultants and all this, and we acceded to this based on, if we did this, we understand from a technical standpoint you have this, but I just don't think it's fair to the Martins. We've had a process that's been going on for more than several months. We've already paid the town's consulting engineer. He's already said this, and I just don't, I can say I don't like it. I don't like it. It's true. I don't get it in the 11th hour after verbally you've been told many times that everything's copacetic, and, oh, by the way, why don't we have a second set of eyes look at it as well? The second set of eyes has to look at it.
You don't need the first set.
It shouldn't have been the first
You don't need the
set,
first
yeah.
set. If the guy's reviewing it and he can't do it, I
Right.
agree.
Exactly.
Paul, do you?
No, looks good.
Lisa?
No, I don't have anything.
Amy, do you want to add?
No, I mean, there definitely, though, from time to time, there's absolutely overlapping services between the consultants. I mean, if you decide not, I think he was looking to give the commission an additional level of comfort about the redevelopment numbers, because it is a complicated set of calculations, you know, what's considered pervious, what's considered impervious, and all those go into the redevelopment number. I don't think that it's a full-blown exercise. I think it's a I don't know, I don't think the task is huge to give you that level of comfort, but it's certainly up to you as to what you feel comfortable with. And you've got Tom Liddy's recommendation, so.
I guess I would feel, to your point, that in this particular case, if the impervious has already dropped, I'm not sure that we can't take Liddy's recommendation as it is. I mean, to me.
Well, Liddy's recommendation, though, is he's asking for additional information.
Yeah, if we want to be even more comfortable.
Right. So you're saying that you're satisfied with his...
I'm pretty happy with it, yeah. But that's just me.
Okay. Anybody in the audience? Okay. I did ask Lisa. I think that's good. So I spent time on the site, met with the different consultants. We've had a chance to take a look at it. I think that the movement of the driveway was something that Mrs. Martin expressed interest in the day that we were out there. It looks pretty insignificant, and it shouldn't really change anything in terms of the stormwater review. Doesn't seem to me. It's pretty straightforward. So, and, you know, we've heard the frustration with the movement of things being here. I went to the meeting with John Cheshire and, you know, discussed getting this thing moved along so that you guys can move forward with the project as expeditiously as possible. You know, in fairness, there is a lot of moving pieces out there. It's a beautiful site, but the marsh wraps all around that, so that, and there's significant changes. Just want to be sure we get our piece of it right. And I don't believe that there's any big issue, and the Martins and Paul, yourself, all seem to be concerned with getting this piece all tied together as well, and we appreciate that. So, and I'm just trying to figure out what it is that won't happen when Cheshire does his stormwater. In other words, Tom Liddy's looked at all of the different information that we got from Paul and reviewed it. They've come to an agreement on all the different resource areas. And so is it a function of confirming square footage, or I just don't understand what is...
For the riverfront?
What is the piece that Tom Liddy doesn't feel comfortable with in his own report?
Well, I don't think if you read his letter, I don't think he's saying he feels uncomfortable. I think he's saying that it's complicated the way they derived the riverfront developed numbers. I mean, I'm not an expert in this either, you know what I mean? So I think that when you're an engineer and you've got the, you know, the ability to take these calculations with a computer and I think that's what he was looking for.
Okay.
Whereas, so Tom's a resource area wetland specialist.
And a lot of this is software.
So that's the overlap.
It's software driven now.
Yeah.
I mean, you take those areas, you plot it.
It is.
And then you come up with a calculation based on that information.
Let me try to explain it very simply. When Tom's looking at the riverfront regs, he has to determine, is this redevelopment or is it a new development? And the determination of that is you have to determine how much of the site's going to be degraded. That's when you remove topsoil and soil. And what we did was, when we do our work, we break out every square foot of the site, and we determine which topsoil now, what's, in this case, ledge now, and what's going to be left when in the proposed condition. If you exceed the existing condition as far as what's being degraded, then you have to do an alternatives analysis, and you have to provide some additional mitigation. Our calculations clearly showed, and I can show you the two sheets. Tom had us break out every square foot of that site, and we labeled each item that was impervious, whether it was ledge or roof, or what was topsoil, what was going to be degraded, and what wasn't going to be degraded. Based upon those numbers, we came under the amount of degradation of the proposed condition is less than what's there right now. The reason is that we're going to be getting rid of the driveway on the right side of that, the proposed driveway. which is a fair amount of it. Plus, we're also gonna come up over the ledge, and we're gonna put the driveway there, along with some plantings along the edge of it. So that's what Tom's looking for. Under the River Act, the riverfront regulations, is the site gonna be degraded more in the proposed condition? And if it is, then you go to the next step. Even though we didn't have to provide the mitigation, we've done that in the form of additional landscaping, which the landscaping plan shows. So, the calculations we gave Tom, when we listed everything out, and he had us do a chart to show how much further back we were gonna move the proposed house and the other work relative to the coastal bank and the wetlands, that's all on those two additional sheets, if you wanna look at them, I'll show them to you quickly, but Tom agreed with all those calculations. He didn't do the actual calculations, we did them because of the software we have in our computer. It's really involved. John Chesia is looking at the amount of impervious area in the existing and proposed condition in the grading of the site, and what does that do as far as shedding more water off the site? Because we have less impervious area, there's less water going off the site, so our calculations show that. Technically, and we said this from day one, when we did the original design, we knew we met that threshold, that's why we didn't do the stormwater originally. So, again, we're simply asking that you don't take Tom Liddy's work and try to mix it in with what John's doing. John has the numbers for impervious areas in the existing and proposed conditions. He's also got the change in the grading that we're doing out there. Tom Liddy didn't look at that, but John will, because that's part of your stormwater. And if John had to go through and review all those numbers on that chart, that's an awful lot of work for him to do, and I don't know if he has the program to do it. But
Which it seems to be was the problem with Tom Liddy, is that neither one, or Tom didn't have the same type of software to do the confirmation.
either that or he didn't want to do them, but what happened was, when we submitted the proposal, we had the results of the numbers.
Yep.
So Tom asked us to break them out.
Okay.
And there's a big, long chart on the plan.
And you gave him that information?
We produced 2 additional sheets. So all he had to do was take the square footage of, say, the amount of sidewalk or the amount of lawn area in certain areas, and he could take a scale and just check it to see if our numbers were in the ballpark. I mean, I'm assuming that's how we checked our work, rather than, to do the whole thing over. I mean, there's a lot of time involved in doing those calcs. And we're simply saying that, it doesn't make sense to have John do the work of Lucas Environmental, which we already paid for. It's apples and oranges.
Yep.
It isn't like John's gonna be missing out on something if he doesn't do those. That's not the case at all. I mean, Mr. Martin's, has spent quite a bit of extra money going through the review process for everyone to check our work, and so far, there haven't been any substantial changes. What we had to do was to produce evidence of how we arrived at the results that we did, and that took a lot of work.
I got it.
Got it.
Okay.
And just by way, in addition to Paul and Greg Tansey, in the prior meetings, Brad Holmes also is involved in this.
I
Brad
understand.
Holmes also did this.
Well, someone had to delineate all those pieces.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So I guess, I'm not disagreeing with you, Paul, with the Liddy piece, and I think for my own information, I'm gonna speak to him directly and with Amy and just see where there could possibly be an issue that would be different than yours. I agree with what you're saying. I'm just gonna take the time to talk to him and see why, or what he felt uncomfortable with, that he can't sign off on this or concur.
Which is Liddy?
Yes. Okay? So, we're not asking Cheshire to do it tonight, and I don't think that's gonna be the case. I'd just like to find out what he is uncomfortable with and why, okay? Not asking you to spend any more, it's not gonna take up any more time. Cheshire's
Still
gotta
waiting to
finish up the
Cheshire,
stormwater
yeah.
Yeah, he's got to
piece.
finish anyway.
All right.
all right?
But John specifically told me Friday, he needs a direction from the commission. If he's not gonna review, to not have to review the riverfront calcs. I mean, John's still reviewing the drain calcs, there's other things he can
Right.
do, but that's a piece he needs to know. And we're saying that, we're asking the commission to let him know that he does not have to
I understand,
incorporate that in his review.
I get it.
Okay.
And I just want to find out from Tom Liddy, I mean, he's had the time to look at all this. To your point, he's been paid for this, so why aren't we there?
I don't know, because when we had that meeting here that day with you, he was all set with them.
Well, I don't, let's find out. All right, but there's no need to do any more work unless there's some really outstanding piece that we're not seeing here. And
So
then,
to continue.
any idea how much longer it's gonna take to get the stormwater piece wrapped up?
Well, the way that those reviews proceed is he'll come up with comments if he has any, and then send them over to the engineer, and then typically they'll respond and resolve any outstanding items. Hopefully, he won't find anything, and, but I think he's moving along quite well.
So so should we just continue this to the 21st?
I think so.
Okay.
Just one thing, again, I hate to be here, but it seems I'm doing a lot of that. The last meeting, there were 3 conditions on which we agreed to the review. One is that it be done very promptly, and from an engineering standpoint, not from a commission standpoint, and it's sliding on that, right? The second thing is we agreed very, very specifically, only 3 things. So already, the basis on which we agreed to this has already gone out the window. And this is like the 5th meeting where we left the meeting, we thought it was a very succinct direction towards closure, and it keeps moving.
Well, I'm not sure I mean, we've had this discussion about this project taking time, and I think it's gone both ways, Bill. Unfortunately, a couple of these meetings were scheduled at times when we had storms. That was out of our control.
I understand.
There were also some pieces on this plan that were not clear that we got resolved. We got plan from Paul showing the site being developed. One of the areas that was on here was a fire pit and some other things right along the marsh that were not shown to be developed, but they were, and I think they've been removed from the plan. So there's a reason for going through this process.
Frank, I'm not being critical of the commission at all, or anything. What I'm just saying is, we recognize the fact that a lot of times the consulting engineers are overwhelmed and overworked. And we're very, very cautious, because the reality is, as of the 21st, the mountains are homeless. The zoning board has already approved, all they're waiting for this, and I just very much hopeful that at the next meeting, well, what I was gonna ask is that, assuming John Chessie is copacetic, that we come back, we close the meeting and vote it, so we can actually, so the mountain can actually, get going and building the house, that's all. And I understand that it's not a straightforward project.
So, and I purposely went to the meeting after the debate that we had the last time. I went out to the site to reiterate that, and that we need to move forward and keep it as tight and simple as possible. And we still want that to happen. And all I'm saying with this piece with Tom Liddy is I just want to see where there's some deviation that he disagrees. And I'm not seeing that it's an issue. I think Paul's point's well made. If they can tell me why there's a problem or why there's not a problem, we'll get at it, and we'll get right back to you with it.
Okay, fine. Can I ask one other thing? As Paul said at the outset, but we didn't answer this, is under the stormwater regulation, section 9.2, even if John Chessie comes back and somehow finds something, there's a small deviation, we're surrounded by coastal storm flowage on 3 sides.
Right.
And what Paul asked for is, that it's an impossibility that the stormwater can go anywhere other than this, is, we just like, we like the commission now, just to tell us, even if it comes back and there's a slight deviation, that it's going to be waived anyhow.
Well, I think we agreed that we're
To
gonna waive.
waive what he requested was standard 2, and we received a memo from John
Yeah, and I spoke to the
acknowledging that,
everyone's
and
agreement.
without even coming in here, I think it was communicated that that was the direction we were headed.
I mean, we can vote that if you'd like it.
No, as long as everyone's on the same.
We are.
page.
John's aware of that as well.
Okay.
Yeah. I
No,
think
I
everybody,
know we sent a memo.
and everybody
Yeah,
was in
yeah.
agreement when we were out there. I mean, the point was well made by Paul. We looked at the site before Amy and John and I left the site. We pretty much agreed that that would happen. Obviously, we're a committee, so everybody has to agree to that.
So assuming that, you're gonna talk with Liddy and make sure there's an explanation.
Yep.
And John Chessie is gonna finish his work and get it to Amy.
Yep.
Assuming those are solved, at the next meeting, can we assume that, can we get a vote at the next meeting?
Close it?
Okay, I'd like a vote, too though, Penny, so we're not lagged out.
That can be the intent. I don't know how we can make a promise.
Yeah.
Huh?
I said, that can be the intent, but I don't know how you can make
The
a promise.
revised plan today, I mean, I think we should see how it goes.
The revised plan is, in my mind, is insignificant. I mean, that really doesn't change anything. It's not like a restart the project for that change. That's pretty minimal in nature. So, I hear what you're saying. Let's see what the outcome of that can be. Obviously, there's a ways to go to get there.
Hope not.
Well, me too, but that's the whole process.
No, it's not, the bond's gonna be very
And we've-
sorry
and
that
then
they
sadly,
agreed to do
but
this in the
sadly,
first
we've
place.
fought about, or had an argument over how to agree on the thing, rather than get to it. I mean, part of the debate's been the analysis of the project, rather than just analyzing the project. You know, we've been back and forth over the required stormwater, or didn't.
For good reason.
Well,
But the Martins
we all
are
have-
very magnanimous people.
I understand, and we want to get there as well, but we also have to review these, it's a beautiful site, but it's also right on the Gulf, and with a lot of it, different areas, and a lot of things, and we've had this problem unfortunately before. A lot of these sites were developed pre some of these regulations, whether we like them or not. There's more regulations, we just need to be sure that we've done our process in getting to there. And I certainly don't want to delay it, and it's one of the reasons I'm on this commission. So I get what you're saying, we'll do the best we can to move this forward. And I'm personally checking in with these things to see that it moves ahead.
Frank, one of the things I wanted to bring up was when we were having our on-site the other day, we talked about the engineer staking the driveway location, because even when we were out there, it was hard to imagine from the site plan just where it was on,
Yeah.
you know, coming through the rock. So I think it would be helpful for some of the commissioners to see that.
But I mean, do you think that's going to matter at this point? I mean, we've been out there,
For the vote, yes, I think
Was-
it will.
we've seen, so we're talking about another site visit?
No, I'm just saying, just verifying that what we talked about in the field, at our field meeting, was that the location of the driveway just be identified in the field, so if the commissioners go back out, that they will understand that the nature of the driveway coming up over the ledge. But that's not to slow down the project.
But I'm just wondering what,
And they could be there already, so.
I know we talked about, it was hard, you know, when you're standing there, it takes a little bit to get it orientated, and we were looking
Yeah.
at a new plan and trying to determine where that was, and I
Right.
thought that we went through that pretty clearly.
Well, you and I did, but I think the other commissioners should be able to go back out there so that they can figure out where they are on the site.
But don't you think at this stage, Amy, and I don't disagree, it's not easy to see entirely, but at this stage, it seems like the site's been available to be viewed, everybody understands that it's a complicated site, and
Well, maybe
Now-
it's just a matter of, Paul, did you stake where the driveway is? Like, you guys said.
the
And we can
proposed,
stake, if, I mean, at this point in time, we're way down the road. John's gonna finish his drain calculations based upon what he has now.
right.
I mean, everything has to be staked out prior to construction, and it's something you'd see during the pre-construction meeting, but
Well, if there is a desire, I can go out with the commissioners and do, to the best of my recollection, where it is, so.
there's quite a few physical features on the plan you have now, as you can see where you are in the field, telephone pole, the pump chamber, existing house, the ledge. It's pretty easy to see where it's going.
I mean, once we were there and we had a plan and we
Yeah.
could see where those pieces were, I could see that. It's a little hard to see, but if you look at enough plans, you get it.
Change.
I'm just not sure, and not to be disagreeing, but I just don't see where we're at in this phase where that would make much difference. I think John Cheshire doesn't need it to do his review.
No, it's for the commissioners, just because I remember being out there and we were all surprised at where the driveway actually came up over the ledge.
But
So, but will that impact what you decide on this project? No. But would it be helpful so that you can visualize the project and what you've been looking at? Because it's such a complicated project, so. But I think, Frank, between you and I, we could probably manage to show them.
okay, I think that'd be fine if anybody has an interest. I'd rather get to the issue with Tom Liddy, and then make sure that we touch base with John Cheshire to see where he is, and if he's got any unanswered questions, that he has that information. So it's getting that piece from Tom Liddy, getting that information to John, so that we can move this forward and try to get this.
Yeah, I think that John could be pretty wrapped up with his review, to tell you the truth. We haven't seen it, our deadline was, for submission, it had already passed, so maybe she hasn't gotten it to us, but
Okay,
I think he's pretty well underway, if not done.
all right. Well, let's see if we can get that, and I'll touch base with you. We'll talk after the meeting, and we'll set up a time to talk with Tom. All right?
So Frank, will someone let John know to keep going and complete the drain calcs with the information he has? Because when I spoke to him Friday, he didn't know if he should wait and finish everything until he had an answer on the,
I'm going to talk, Amy and I will talk to Tom Liddy. I just want to confirm that that's the case, do that tomorrow. Then there's no reason why I can't tell John to just get that wrapped up.
all right.
All right? Are there?
I think so.
I make a motion to continue Martin, 67 Border Street to May 21st at 6:20.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Toll Brothers, Hadley and Tilden Road.
You gonna throw it, Jeff? Yeah, oh, all right, you guys are. Yeah. So, Bill Laurenberg, I'm here with Jeff Delisi. I'm also here with Dave Buckley and Mark Manganello. And just by way of review, since the last meeting, Mark had submitted, just to get the ball rolling, some proposed conditions, and in turn, I'd like to thank Amy for, she reviewed those and came up with some conditions. One of the things that we did was a PDF document, and we submitted back. In the vast majority of these, we don't even have to discuss, but part of it is the questions and whatnot. In case you didn't have a hard copy,
What's that? This?
why don't you give it?
I have your.
What's that,
Yeah,
your
it's-
comments?
It's one with Jeff's comments.
Yeah, well, why don't we just have it, because this way, like 90% of them, that's all, we don't have to talk about 5 of them or something.
You are welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right, this is going to require my glasses.
Yeah.
All right, again, Micah. Good job.
So, one of the things I just wanted to ask Amy and the commission is, any of the things, which is, I think, is 80, 90% of them, that there's no marking on, then unless the commission wants it, we don't need to discuss any of those. But a lot of these are by way of, some of it is just language, and some of it is some questions, that's all.
So do you want to address these, Bill, with,
Sure. Sure, if we just, and I'll just give you the reasoning for it, and some is just language, but, and so the ones we don't discuss is everything's copacetic the way it's written. Number two is more just a technical provision, and what the technical provision is that we're just making the fact that expiration of appeal periods has to be in there in addition to, because when the order's signed, because I'll just tell you, as a practical matter, because of the local bylaw, there's a 60-day appeal period from the time it's filed. And so we just want to make it clear that the expiration of the appeal period, because the Toll Brothers won't commence construction on site until the end of all the appeal periods. I know oftentimes oftentimes in the town of Scituate, because the building commission is okay, after the expiration of the state appeal period of 10 business days, oftentimes people proceed, but in this case of a development of this magnitude, we'll wait until the end of that period. So very simply,
It's at the buy it, too.
yeah, and so that's linguistically all that is.
so you're saying that you'd be starting erosion control even though it's you may be doing that within that 60-day period?
Yeah, because I think erosion control is just putting down silt socks and stuff, isn't it, Mark?
So essentially, you want to prep for the site, you just don't want to start excavation.
Yeah, exactly, and, nothing intrusive.
But you are gonna start to prepare to do that.
But want the option to do that. So
Okay.
in other words, it's nothing substantial, but you can imagine with this kind of acreage, it takes a while to get the silt sock down.
Yeah, so you won't start any cutting
No.
or any excavation, but you may prep
Correct.
for that. All right. And so the erosion control typically goes in, or gets reviewed at a pre-construction, so the pre-construction might take place during that period.
Sure. So that was the only I didn't miss anything on 2, Mark? Is that it? And we just put the land court because this is registered land, that's all.
So you take out,
terminology.
so is the word registry stay, is it land court registry?
Yeah, the,
Land court registry. That's not right, is it? I don't think the wording's correct.
Keep an eye on these guys, Mark.
Trying. So the issue here is when this is going to be recorded, right? When the order would be recorded.
no, not on that one.
On number 2?
It says prior to the start of work, within 3 weeks of.
of work.
The order shall be recorded at the registry district. Yeah, within 3 weeks of expiration of the appeal periods. That's all we're saying.
Of the bylaw appeal period.
Correct. Or whatever it is, but as a practical matter, we're probably going to go ahead and file these anyhow. But this is just what we don't want to have as a situation where we're mandated that we have to do certain things and there's an appeal. That's all,
Got it.
right? And number 3 is just simply pre-construction meeting will be held with the Conservation Commission. In other words, we may have, I don't know, Amy, from a practical matter, you may want your own pre-construction meeting versus the one the planning board has. So if there's a couple.
No, we'll probably combine the planning board pre-construction meeting, and that would be with me, not with the commissioner.
Okay. So,
It's, well, I guess we're gonna get down through all this, but pre-construction with you or Karen?
Yeah, we would hold a town board pre-construction meeting.
I'm assuming on a project to the side, there's gonna be others, if other departments, DPW or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So DPW would be there, the inspectors, we would hold it, the comprehensive staff would be there with their team, and they would give us, their proposed construction schedule, their contacts, we review the basics of the permits, make sure everybody has the right plan set. It's a basic, standard pre-construction meeting.
Is the town's consultant still involved with this at this point?
Yes,
So would
they'll continue.
there'd be a portion,
Yes.
part of that as well?
Correct.
Okay.
The only reason I
So then number 2 is staying the way it was typed then?
no,
rather
No.
no, we're talking about 3 now.
I'm sorry, number 3 will stay the way it was typed.
The only, and again, I won't bog down on this, but the Conservation Commission, in other words, I don't want to have, we're ready to go, and some esoteric part-time commission or person can't show up here, and we're like spinning our wheels. If Amy's available and all the major people are available, that's all. And so what I'm saying is, by using the word "be held with the Conservation Commission," we can't do anything with the planning board unless everyone's involved, because it's a broader thing. But I just, again, it's more of an esoteric issue. I don't want to get bogged down on it. But if you guys are insistent that other language is there, that's okay, because as a practical matter, I know how it works.
Somebody will be there.
Well, yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying. You're gonna try to line this up with all these boards.
It's a lot of-
You waited 3 weeks.
A lot of boards.
Right, so it may be that it's not gonna be total.
Right.
No, it's not the boards that hold the pre-construction.
It's not the
meeting.
boards,
It's
but-
the staff.
Agents.
But even just the,
Be with the contractors.
but even just the staff, like if all of a sudden you're trying to come up with a
Someone's on vacation.
day.
We're coming up to
that,
summer.
Then they would send a representative of that department. So if you don't get Kevin Cafferty, you get Sean McCarthy, for
Okay.
instance.
But this is our set of orders, so should it be just conservation for this set of orders? There'll be other boards with their pieces.
Right, this is our
Right, no, it's
purview.
just,
Right, so that's the
But
reason.
We're not
we're not
concerned with
calling
the planning
for-
board's meeting and the building department's meeting.
So pre-construction meeting shall be held with
The conservation.
with the
agent.
conservation
Conservation
agent
agent.
prior to construction, or that
Conservation agent.
meeting
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
will
agent.
likely be with other,
Right,
Okay.
but if it's not, it won't be a
Other people.
holdup.
Yeah, so
Right.
conservation
You can
agent.
still-
Well, we're gonna scratch other town boards and replace that with conservation commission.
Agent.
Or
Agent.
Agent, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Then we're all set up to number 11.
That's good.
And,
Yeah, we're 12.
well, it's 11.
Oh, yeah, there's 11.
Yeah, it's 11. All we're trying to do is if for some reason there's a stop work order, we just want in writing the reason for that so that we can fix it. So in other words, it's not, and that's so it's not, we want that. And so, and then when we resume this, we just want notification, because I know sometimes you're ready to go and we don't get it. An email suffices. So if there's a problem, we just want to know it in writing so our guys can address it immediately, that's all.
So let's just say, Bill, that there's an issue on site that the commission feels detrimental to the project.
Right.
And if Luke found that problem, the agents found it, whatever.
Sure.
They have to run back to town hall, write a letter, run back, and say you need to halt work.
No, as a practical matter under the statute, Frank, you guys can halt work whenever you want. But all we're saying is that, all we just want to know is what the reasoning is, just put it in writing so we can address it. So yeah, if they say, stop work, we're going to call X,
Specific
Y, and
reasons,
Z,
right.
then give it to us so we can call, so Mark can come out and figure out what we got to do. That's all.
Make sure
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah.
it's passed on.
And I get it too. I mean, we had a member a few years ago that liked to run around with stuff and ran onto a site, told everybody to halt work and then disappeared. And my phone lit up like a Christmas tree.
I think from a practical matter, if it is an issue, it may be an operator of a piece of machinery, as initially the person's going to be working on the site and running the site, I want to get the notice that, hey, this is what's going on, so it's not being passed third hand back to myself.
Yeah.
So I can take appropriate action.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense, actually.
All right.
No, because we've had issues,
I
we've
know
never
that. I
got
know
back
that.
to the
Yeah,
boss.
so that's okay, we're up to 20. And the only point in 20 is, obviously,
Roger.
if we're putting in silt socks, that's fine, but the other thing too is, as far as clearing, and I think it's implicit, because an order of conditions covers jurisdictional matters to the commission, but we just want to make sure, just make it clear that it's jurisdictional matters. So in other words, if the planning board's fine and there's a tree that's 1,000 feet from a resource area, we don't want to say you can't cut down the tree, that's all.
So, like,
Jurisdiction.
Ken, are you thinking that the erosion control installation would take place before the pre-construction meeting?
Yeah.
Potentially, yes. And I think that would also help to give a fantastic visual as to the limits of work.
Here's
and
where we're at.
Yeah.
Instead of looking at
And if there's a
stakes
problem
or
with it,
flags
then
100
that can
feet
be
apart.
direct-
Yeah, and if you want something moved, they can move it.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
So next is,
You go with that?
Yeah?
next is 22. And there is no compensatory storage areas in this project, so that's why we struck those words. And in Phase 2 of the project, the only thing they marked tells me, except for a single detention and related components that is being constructed in the second construction sequencing phase.
The storm drainage system. About the initial project. Oh, so it's going to happen in the second?
Yes.
Well, there's a section of it,
Except for
It-
one
it-
single
One
detention.
basin,
Correct.
yeah.
Okay.
which is part of the storm drainage system as a whole.
But the majority will be done in the first phase.
That is correct.
Same. That's,
Standard procedure, right?
Yeah.
All right, so then we're up to 32. And now our only question is, and Mark can give the rationale for this, is we're just asking for 3 growing seasons as opposed to 5. That's usually the standard the commission uses. And also, just to clarify, that these are the plantings and the replication and the restoration areas, because separate and distinct from this, outside of the jurisdictional issue of this, there's like, I don't want to be speaking hyperbole, but there's like 1 million trees that are going in that are non-jurisdictional. Right?
Okay.
That's not.
What does that
Well,
mean?
well placed.
What does that
I mean to
mean?
exaggerate. But it's not much of an exaggeration.
Yeah. Another way of putting it is a comprehensive landscape package.
yeah.
Now, that I understand.
So that was the only commentary, is to clarify that, and we'd ask the 3 growing seasons, because Mark, that's usually way more than enough to
Are they
establish.
going to all die after the 4th?
Well,
Well, they could all die after the 6th, I mean.
Well, I know that, I'm just,
we're tasked with writing monitoring reports each growing season, so the commission will be apprised of the amount of success we're having. If after 3 growing seasons, we're at a point where we've achieved 75% coverage and success,
yeah.
then we can come to the commission and say, we're requesting either a partial COC, we probably won't be in a position to get a full COC by then, partial COC to confirm that that's done. Now, at that point, if there's an issue with the plantings, you'll have the opportunity to say, no, it's not, it's not ready yet. But we'd like to at least have the opportunity after 3 growing seasons to come to you if it is successful at that point and be able to move on.
So would you like to put in 75% success?
No.
That's in there actually under number 40 already.
Okay.
So,
Are you go with that?
Yeah, the only reason why it was 5 was because your consultant, Amy Ball, had suggested 5, so.
Right. But I agree, we could, if it's flourishing,
you don't issue the
or
partial
if we're
certificate.
unhappy with it,
Well, that's job
We can
security
still-
for her, so we'll go with 3.
Right. 37 is just a linguistic thing, in other words, by reference here, and that's all. And 40 just tracks the 3 growing seasons, the same is. number 32. And the next page is just kind of renumbering, and there was probably a computer glitch that repeated some of the numbers. So using the new numbers that are sequential from the prior ones, then the next one speaking about is after 44, the old number 38. Well, we just feel this is too broad, because as a practical matter, Horsley and Witten, the town's consulting engineers, Amy Ball continues to be involved, and it's as you said, the 95 conditions in the planning board situation. It's, as a practical matter, the commission always has the ability under statute and bylaw to do all kinds of stuff, and because if we don't do this, but basically, Horsley and Witten has been involved with consulting engineers for 2 years here, and what we really don't want to get is the battle of consulting engineers. So Horsley Witten is a continuing town consulting on this, and they should adequately handle any issues.
I don't think that that's been decided, that they'll continue, honestly.
But whether it's decided or not, literally, this condition is already in.
Right, so
the planning board.
there's definitely overlap in this condition with the planning board, and the intent is not to duplicate their efforts. It would be the same consultant, especially for stormwater, which our permit also covers. But what planning board does not cover is the wetland scientist, so for specifically to the buffer and resource area work. So we would want an independent third party paid by the applicant to cover that, who would not necessarily be Horsley Witten.
Well, that's a problem.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
I guess, do you foresee that Horsley Witten's not going, I mean, I would think that'd be difficult.
There's been discussion that it could be somebody different. I think that if there is a question about this one, we should bump this to town council and ask their recommendation.
I mean, I see the need to have someone review certain aspects of this.
Right.
I guess I'd be disappointed if we've been working with Horsley Witten through this whole piece, and now we're going to change this up at this stage unless we're unhappy with their work. So I guess we should know that.
Well, I don't think that we want to put in a consultant, you know what I mean? So that's why it's left broad.
Could we mention that we would prefer to have Horsley Witten if they're available? That would be.
I don't think you'd want to do that in the order. I think we should ask town council for
Well,
some suggested wording.
First thing is, I don't want to send this to the abyss. In 49, we get to this, we're already talking about a surety bond. And if you have a surety bond, isn't that, we have belt suspenders and we have like 17 cross things. All we're just saying is, however the town proceeds, and under your local bylaw, you have a right to do this anyhow. But again, just desperately, if the town decides they want new consulting engineers, fine, and I agree with Amy, we shouldn't slot this to anyone, but that's not a legal issue. This is basically a business decision. But when we get to 49, if we're talking about, there's going to be an enormous surety bonds that are going to cover all of this stuff anyhow. And the bottom line is, the Toll Brothers will be highly motivated to get reductions in their bond, and they're not going to get reductions in the bond unless all the applicable town boards are satisfied and signed off, and the town boards aren't going to satisfy and sign off for a bond reduction unless you had your consultant say, yeah, it's okay.
Is this supposed to be $10,000?
No.
Well, let's stick
We're not
with,
down there
let's
yet.
deal with 38 and see, I mean, I see the need, or I can see the need for a third-party person to review some of these pieces. It's a large site, and our agent's not gonna get out to
Understood.
look at all of this. So how do we address that?
Well, why don't you start by saying specifically what you want them to address, and not just very
I was
broadly.
just gonna say, we need to put a.
The interest of the commission. What do you want them to address?
Why don't you let Mark, what are your thoughts?
So we were just talking about specifying a frequency with which this environmental monitor would do their monitoring. That would take away some of the vagueness of this. So typically, it can be done like bi-weekly. Could arrange for bi-weekly site visits from the commission's environmental monitor with reporting to the commission at that level of frequency. Because our concern obviously is that, there's an.
Yeah, you don't want someone out there just roaming around.
No.
Exactly.
Right.
Right,
And I
I
think-
mean, we might want to tie it to rain event, you know what I mean? Because what we're concerned about is off-site siltation, stability of the site. So obviously,
Yeah.
once site conditions become stable, the need for a monitor drops dramatically. But during times when it's heavy construction and there's big rain events, then the need is going to go up.
But I would assume that the stormwater piece, that runoff and stuff is, and I maybe shouldn't make that assumption, but I'm assuming that that piece would be really checked on by the planning board. And that our concern would be more habitat or the different environmental
Erosion
pieces.
control. In the buffer areas. So
Right.
we're definitely
Yeah, all
just
right, so
sticking
I get
to
it.
our areas
To
of
protect it,
jurisdiction.
I get it. I get
And
that.
there's overlap. I mean, in some ways, part of this could be the stormwater
Yep.
inspector.
But you're right,
You know what I
I mean,
mean?
if there's work adjacent to the wetland or a buffer,
Like I'm thinking bi-weekly in the beginning, but I don't see that throughout the duration of the project.
Well, even
You know what I mean? But
no.
that's why I like the rain event, tying it potentially to a half-inch or inch rain event. I don't know, there's something that people, we need to think about it.
There's going to be some engineering oversight as well, right, under the planning board decision.
Right.
So that would all be tied into a rain event, I would think, unless you want to have a second set of eyes on erosion controls after a rain event, but that would all be covered under that.
Under that, right.
Those are already covered under the
Yeah, so that's covered under the engineer, yeah, so bi-weekly,
Not to mention that the contractor's going to be working under a stormwater pollution prevention plan and
Right.
NIPD's permit, and
Right.
they're required to report after, I think, quarter-inch
right.
rain events.
Correct.
Right, no, I agree that we could tighten this up, rein it in on frequency of inspections, and, you know what I mean? So maybe it's tied to when it's planted, you know what I mean? So for the first,
Well, I think the key
couple of
that,
months, that you're working out there, that type of thing.
as it's already written here, I think tying in scope to duration of these inspections, and even as it's written here, work, and basically for the work and during the work in the buffer zone as it relates to the restoration work going on. So, for an example, when we're, as you just stated, replanting and revegetating those areas, I would see those as a reasonable time period which you'd want to have the biweekly inspections.
Yeah, so it could be written so that the EM, the environmental monitor representing the commission, will conduct bi-weekly inspections during construction of the wetland replication and restoration areas and during,
That would be it, really.
yeah, that could be it right
Yeah, I
there.
mean, I would sum everything up right there.
And during, what was the last thing you said?
Just during construction of the replication and restoration areas.
Right, and then also to evaluate site stability and the limit of work.
Right, so if we could get language that addresses your specific concerns without duplicating the efforts of what
Oh,
you're already
I
doing.
think we got the language.
I think
Let's
once
just
we
do it.
go to
So I
site
think
stability,
what
then we're
you
getting
said-
into.
Yeah, we start going to
That gets
scope of work
redundant.
that can go
Well,
for years beyond
I
restoration's
think we want to
complete.
add on the requirements so it's not just during that replication, because we've got a separate need in the resource area to make sure that there's not breakout. And again, I don't think it's going to be through the duration of the project, but it would be during the construction and thereafter until the conditions become stable.
Okay, could it be written such that there could be language that says the Conservation Commission can accept reporting from the planning board's consulting engineer if it covers that subject matter? so there's no redundancy.
We don't want redundancy.
We don't need Amy Ball out there,
No,
plus someone else from
no,
Worsley
absolutely
looking
not,
at
no.
Yeah.
That's what I said in the beginning, this condition overlaps with some of the services that the monitor for the planning board will be providing.
So with that said, why wouldn't we just be going back to what you suggested, Mark, for scope and duration? Are we circling back around almost that same thing?
Because we want this person to also be reporting to the Conservation Commission.
Yeah.
We want it to be referenced in our order.
I think as long as it eliminates that potential redundancy, it'll work out okay.
So, let's just, in other words, look at the language, so we're done, so we're not. So, Mark, give us some language. So using paragraph 38 here, paid for by the applicant, bi-weekly, and then it says, during the construction of...
Buffer zone or resource replication
Yeah,
areas.
during
You can
in
do it, Mark.
research, during construction of, and then what's added after that?
During construction of the restoration / replication areas. Mark, why don't you work on this as we continue on?
Yep.
Okay.
And then we'll revisit it with Mark's language.
Yeah, we'll just jump back.
Good idea.
So, number 47, that was just telling you what the proposed,
47?
Markers.
47.
It was
The markers.
41.
The
Markers,
markers.
41, yeah.
4-inch by 4-inch by 36-inch pressure-treated post spaced every 100 feet.
So these are gonna be out of the ground 3 feet.
3 feet up.
Okay.
Or less, I mean,
Well,
it's,
so if they're 3 feet high and they're buried in the ground 18 inches, then they're only gonna be sticking up 18 inches. If they're 3 foot, are we saying that these posts are gonna be sticking out of the ground 3 feet?
What do you want?
we were trying to,
Right.
Make it
we
less than
were grasping for straws, trying
Okay.
to find what exactly
Do you
it was
remember
the
what we've had
intention.
Before,
3 feet.
I think
Well, there's going to be
3
signage
by 3 or
on these
4 by
posts.
4 times 30, yeah, that
well, they're
sounds right.
they'll be 4 by 4, which is 3.5
Okay,
inches.
4 by
We're not
4
gonna
by
split those
36.
yet.
That
Right, but
sounds
the
good.
question is, how deep do we want them and how
Right,
tall
are they
do we
gonna go
want them?
3
Like
feet
two-
deep below and 3 feet
If we say we
above?
want 3-foot markers and they put them in the ground, they're gonna
Yeah,
be sticking up
no,
18 inches.
what I
Right.
found in my
Yeah.
experience is that you want to leave them up out of the ground so people can see them.
Right, they
rather
don't
than
get
They
sit
need
around.
3 feet up, so how far down
So
to
they're
have them
gonna be
stable?
like 5 foot.
So a
Yeah,
5-foot
2
post,
foot.
within 2
We
feet.
were thinking of like, more like the 18 down, 18 up, I mean, it's 3 feet above the
Okay.
ground. It's-
So just say
That's gonna bid.
4 by 4 by 36 above ground pressure treated posts.
Well,
Plus, you want them,
Yeah, I was saying the reverse.
yeah, he wants them.
You're 18,
He wants
no.
them, he wants them so you're looking at them, they're like here, so in other words,
No, the reverse, so you're not staring at these.
3-foot things.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
you're only staring
Yeah,
at something
look at
18
things
inches
this
high
high
out of the ground.
36-inch post buried 18 inches.
Yes,
High enough
Yes,
to
thank
trip
you.
on them, but not so
All right.
tall.
Is
that they're
signs
high.
going on?
say that again, Amy, sorry?
I said tall enough so people don't trip over them.
right, so 30,
But not so
inches,
tall
that you
18
know-
inches above grade.
I mean, we can do 12 inches above the ground if you feel it less obtrusive. I mean, I think it'd be still
We've
visually.
gone looking from everything that's flush with the ground to stuff that's in the air. We've had different
Yeah, and
things
I've had
proposed.
bad experiences with sites where they're too low.
Yeah, no, and they get buried if you leave it
Trip on
natural,
'em,
yeah.
Lawnmowers, I mean, so you're better off leaving them up.
18 inches, okay.
Yeah, so 36 inches, 18
Fine.
inches above
2
grade.
feet,
Leave them wherever you want, honestly.
2 feet out of the ground.
So
And we're
what-
gonna
so
have
just-
signs, and they're gonna have signs on them.
What about the little people?
Yeah, signs, I think it says signs. Yeah,
All right.
Signs?
permanently mark that, so the post would have a marker on it which says conservation area. I mean, we could put that in there too, so there's no confusion. Isn't that what,
Typically, we have had some signage on it says this is.
buffer zone, conservation area,
Right.
restricted, I mean,
It's
sensitive
not very
area.
big signs.
Little
They're
plaque.
not very big.
Yeah, little
A
placard.
little bit bigger
placards.
than that, just so people,
'Cause, yeah,
3.5
It's not
inches wide,
just-
so it's
let's
that's
face
for the
it, if
post.
there's just a post out of the ground,
You'll be
they're just gonna walk through it.
arrested and sent to jail for the rest of
Put a
your life.
radioactive sign on it.
Go to
You know,
jail, go
but
directly to
they're
jail.
not big.
All right, so is that okay on the?
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about 49. First of all, Amy, it says condition blank.
So
I'm
all
not
for the folks that are in the room getting bored out of their brain, so we're just, these are a set of orders and conditions for the Toll Brothers project that we're trying to work through. And there's not too many more here, but we have to work through these pieces tonight. If anybody has a specific question on one, feel free to put up your hand. We'll get there fairly quickly.
I believe that.
No.
Yeah. The only, to get, this is kind of a, and again, after this, that's it. I mean, we have two things, it's easy, but conceptually,
Fine.
what we have, and I know there's been kicking this around, but with that in mind, also going to assuage any issues which the commission may have, it's going to be, Toll Brothers are doing something very unusual that we haven't talked in great detail at this, but at the planning board we did. Almost, I've never been involved in a project that someone did a surety bond at the beginning because it's so expensive to do that. Is because you're bonding an enormous infrastructure, whether it's the buffer, restoration, everything. But they're doing that for the purposes of being able to move with alacrity. So, with that in mind, there's a giant bond. I don't like the concept because there's so many overlapping jurisdictional issues. The bottom line is, one, there's going to be an enormous surety bond, which is going to be approved by the town treasurer, approved by the town, and that bond cannot be reduced absent voting of the town to reduce the bond. Two, separate and distinct from this, the commission has a belt and suspenders, is because we cannot get any partial certificates of compliance unless you're happy of what the entire status of the project is when we might come in at any given time. So you already have that anyhow, but with that in mind is what I don't want to have is that we have a X number of millions of dollars of bond, and all of a sudden, you know, it's the dueling bond issue as to, well, is that conservation, or is that planning board, or, as you know, you already have dual jurisdiction on stormwater, so I just don't want to get caught in the middle of that, that's all.
And I guess we've had discussion about this as well, and from the Conservation Commission standpoint, our concerns have been pretty much the wetlands protection in those buffer zones. And we have worked together on the stormwater.
Right.
More from an aspect of how those areas can also be vegetated and whatnot. So Amy had some discussion with the town accountant, who's had not great experience with having overlapping pieces. There've been two separate sureties, one for the Conservation Commission's purview and the others for the planning board. And I think it's a place where we should be talking about it, because obviously we need to know that this is going to get done. We know that if you want to sell out all these projects and wrap this up, that it is so you might have to get a partial one, and that's where the commission can exert leverage.
Exactly.
And say, listen, you want to get these 20, 30 units released, we want to see X number of stuff done, and we talk about that. But let's just say, for instance, that the project doesn't get completed.
Right.
So at that point, we've got a whole big disturbed area.
Right.
And then how do we know, or can we be assured at least that things will get somewhat restored? You know, we hope that that doesn't happen for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, but the answer is, the surety, the master surety bond for the entire project is going to cover all the infrastructure.
So do we know what that looks like, Bill? Do we have that information?
From the planning board, Frank, we have to, because number one, the surety bond And I'm just trying to think is the effective way of this.
I mean, I understand why that this is more palatable. I mean, we do a bond with the town for road openings and all this
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, no,
We don't
we-
want to give the town $100,000 and have it sit there so that we can open up some roads. You pay $500 for a bond.
Right.
And then you have, the town has the assurance that the road's going to get fixed if we don't do it.
So just tell, and again, I've already told you my concept. What is it that you want? Let's see if we can figure this out. We're not,
Maybe a schedule of value.
It's not $10,000.
Maybe a schedule of value.
no.
I guess we would need to see the mechanism that the planning board's approving. I'm just trying to figure out how you can put this.
To see if we have a say in that.
Piece, and I understand what Amy's saying, I mean, cash is king. If it's actual
No,
money
we've
that's-
been instructed by the finance director and the town administrator to go for a separate cash amount based on the construction cost for the replication.
All right.
So that's what we've been told.
All right, I'll check that. but-
Ultimately, it's your decision, but
Well,
keeping them separate is very important, from what I understand, and I'm not a financial person.
Okay, so my question, so I understand, is with a surety bond, would we be able to have access to what we would need for replication for conservation if we didn't have our own separate surety bond?
No, we need our own separate one because we're distinct activities, right? So specifically tied to conditions 32 and 40 for the buffer zone restoration, replication activities, not for the whole project, but specifically for that. But it's the number we need to, which we've asked for them for some estimate on what that number should be. 10,000 was a placeholder, obviously not
That's
correct. Right, but anyways, and then, but I think that the advantage to cash also would be that we could structure it so that they could get, an amount back after it was planted, you know what I mean? Where I don't think that the bond gives you that same flexibility.
Put it this way, we absolutely will not agree to that. Is because there's a multi-million-dollar surety bond thing where the Toll Brothers are bonded. They don't have $1 million in cash to put it with the town of Scituate, albeit it's not even FDIC insured, so we'll go down that route if the town's, there's a liability issue there. But the town's own, under your local bylaw, under your performance guarantee, it envisions that it can be a bond, it can be this, it can be the other thing, and the point is, surety bonds are reduced all the time, and that's the entire mechanism, but we already went up and down this road with the planning board. We're not putting $5 or $10 million in an account. That's the reason why companies are bonded, and why you have surety bonds. So it's the cash isn't king here. It's,
Right.
No, it's about protection. It's a protection mechanism, not necessarily cash.
yeah, and what I'm saying is the surety company is approved by the town treasurer and whatever. If you look at actually under chapter 41, we already had this discussion at the planning board level, the chapter 41 of the general laws of Mass, it's the applicant who decides the amount of surety, whether it's cash, securities, covenant, or surety bond. And what I'm saying is your section 7 of your performance guarantee envisions the same parallel to that.
So we have a discrepancy between what the feedback we're getting from the town accountant or the town manager and this that we've got to hammer out.
Well, let me just ask a straight-faced question. The
Yeah.
straight-faced question is, admittedly, we have dual jurisdiction in a number of areas.
Yeah.
So you tell me how you bifurcate the amount of bonding when there's dual jurisdiction without doing a duplication. Tell me how you do it, because we'll be eligible for the Nobel Prize.
Did you ask the same question of the planning board?
No, because we envision with the planning board, they're bonding the entire project, period.
in an amount that the town's consultant
Consulting engineers, Department of Public
Says-
Works,
works.
treasurer, everyone says.
You tell us what you want.
So I think and I know that it came to you very lately, so you can go by the 10-day rule if you want. But
No, thank you.
We asked what the construction cost for the replication would be. I think we asked that question, although I think it was this afternoon. So,
You haven't given any thought to that at all?
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit.
I don't have anything with me today.
okay, I understand. You have up to 10 days to get it to us.
Can I make a suggestion?
Go ahead.
In other words, if we eliminate this entire provision, why don't, Amy, in the bonding provision for the planning board, why don't you put a provision in there that, in other words, it's subject to also approval for those matters jurisdictional, the Conservation Commission, those matters jurisdictional Conservation Commission. I don't have a problem with that. I understand you don't want to get left out, I get it.
Well, we were instructed specifically
Well, if there's gonna
to
be people
get
walking through the
our
town
own
hall with
money.
big bags of
when-
cash, I think a couple of them need
Why
to.
not?
No,
It needs to be separate,
Well,
is what we were advised.
well, let's get to the bottom. I mean, I could foresee this being an issue that's gonna get debated, and we obviously don't wanna go around on this forever, so we just need to get.
Perhaps we should buck this one to town council.
I don't want
Because
town
maybe
council
there's
involved in
a
anything.
legal reason why, you should or should not. That's why Karen and I actually went to the finance director, is there a reason tied to municipal finance that we need to keep it separate? And the answer was yes,
So
because
the-
they're separate
so the-
matters.
So Jim Boudreau said it should be separate.
No.
Meeting this morning, we
Well,
talked about it.
Well, we
yes.
talked about it this morning, and the feedback was that the town accountant, treasurer, whatever title is, felt that they should be separate. And I don't think Jim, in my recollection, his sort of thing was, I'm gonna let the boards work this out.
Right, but I'm back to
So-
the question I asked. It's dual jurisdiction. How do you do this and not have duplication of costs? How do you do it? Because I don't know how you do it.
Well, then again, you haven't set a number, and I don't know what the number should be for this whole bond. I mean, we just said.
Well, it's whatever Horsley Witten in the town board say.
So a function of deriving that number would be the wetlands replication piece,
Right.
right? So we're gonna come up with a number, an agreeable number for the wetlands replication. You're gonna tell us what you think it's cost. Wesley Witten's gonna take a look at it, say, do we agree with that number? And then there's the number for the wetlands replication. So I don't think it's that hard to determine what's wetlands and what's stormwater. To your point, if you guys have a bond for the whole project, and that number is already included in it, why does it have to be
Right.
independent?
Right.
So that's really where we're at, we're not even talking, we haven't got to the number yet.
Yeah, but it's premature even to pick a number.
Yeah.
With the
So-
surety bond, can you allocate how much of a surety bond that could be applied to conservation?
You have a bond that covers everything, you gross it up, and then it's only partially released or reduced in amount, based on if all of a sudden you say, okay, you had $1 million worth of asphalt going in, and Horsley Witten and DPW signs off and says, yeah, 900,000 went in, so we can reduce the bond by 900,000. That's how it works, is bonds are reduced in a very cautious manner. That's another whole set of issues, but it's kind of premature until, I know, you're just throwing a dart at a dartboard to pick a number, that's all I'm really getting at.
I'm sure you guys are trying to work towards a number, so then the second question is, and I'm sure it'll be easier to agree on the number than it will be to decide how it gets, whether it's one party or two.
See, I thought the whole purpose of this is you were just looking for some kicker at the end, separate and distinct from the bond, that, in other words, what I think was intended to be, there was 10,000, I think.
Just to give you sense of scale or some kind of point of comparison,
Mm-hmm.
the Benjamin Studley Farm subdivision,
Yeah.
$1,600
Right.
was the amount of the check that you required to be taken to assure wetland replication plantings.
And you know what?
$1,600.
I had to recluse myself from that.
That was very small, though.
So
compared to
how many
this.
units was that? How many houses was that? Let's multiply it out and figure in.
Oh, if you want to do that, then we're up
And
to
how
where I
long it
want
was
you to
Yeah,
be.
but on that project, though, you're taking it
16,000.
out of context, that project, the replication area was like 400 square feet.
It was nothing.
It was very, very small, so that's, we can't compare that.
But,
And also, just one more point, is that I think the benefit to keeping them separate is the buffer zone replication piece that we're looking for guarantee or assurance for is much smaller than what planning board is looking for the entire project. I've heard that that bond is huge scales bigger than what we would be looking for.
But so just to
Would be
be
based on
just to
construction.
play the devil's advocate,
Yeah.
if they're bonding this whole project, and we're a portion of it, why does it matter whether we're joined or what?
That's a question that the finance people can answer.
But, because I think I'd like to know
The
that.
answer that I was given was that if you bond a project, you can only tap into it's difficult to tap into the bond. And that, I don't know, I think there's a limit to how many times you can. And so if we have a smaller piece that's a distinct, separate thing that we're assuring for, we should and must keep it separate. That was-
Yes, I see that,
At a
but
meeting
you
regarding
also,
this topic, two of them.
if you contractually, legally got a bite at the apple, it's doable. You know, if we get a bite at the apple for the huge bond,
You're
you're
gonna
not,
lose control.
But
over it.
if there's no limit to how much and how frequently you can release the money for conservation. If there's a limit, then that would be different, but if there isn't a limit,
Well, so
then it
you
would be
could-
the
you
same
could-
thing.
There's a difference here. What the difference is, from a planning board standpoint, there is no covenant, there is no lien, and if we don't do it, there is no mechanism other than the surety bond. The difference with the conservation matters is there is a lien, because in the absence of a certificate of compliance, that is what your insurance is. So the surety bond is a secondary issue. You don't have to sign a partial certificate of compliance if you're not happy with the status of what's going on. That's the difference.
As long as the project's completed.
Can I just ask a question?
Right.
I think, in my mind, we're making this a huge, huge issue.
Right.
I personally, why can't you take out a surety bond, say, for $100,000 for Concom? Why can't we have our own? You just keep saying you're taking this huge one out for planning, and I understand that's gonna be huge. Why can't we have our own small one? I mean, we're not looking for millions of dollars.
Well, I
We
think
just wanna
I'd be careful to
careful
set
on
a
the
number.
amount.
Right, but,
no, she's
but do you understand what
that
I'm
is a
saying?
possible road to
Right,
look
right,
at, if
clearly.
you get your arms around what is the
Because
number,
we are
what the
looking
bond
for the
costs.
replication area.
That's what I just said.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, that's what I'm saying, and so,
But I guess my point
You
in
want
looking
to
at this
clearly
would
define
be
the
the
mechanism.
multiple bonds, like is
Right.
there a bond for
So-
DPW for the road, is there
All
a
right.
bond for?
So, Penny's good idea. So, we're willing to post a surety bond for $100,000 for the wetlands replication. All right, if you want the surety bond for $100,000, but we have to talk about the mechanism of release of that, so there's no confusion. In other words, so I don't get into a dual jurisdictional thing. If it's a surety bond, that's the Concom, I want you guys releasing it.
Well, I think before you, and maybe 100,000 is the
well,
right number.
you've got
but-
10 here, so I'm just throwing another figure
right.
out, okay?
Right, so it's
Because-
gonna be based on
because-
something
I mean,
real.
everybody's looking
Yeah.
at this thing and say, well, wait a minute, if they agreed, if
probably
I was
not.
sitting over there and said, you just, we're just lobbing stuff back and forth, which I don't.
What I'm asking for
Right,
is a
that's a good
surety
point,
bond
Frank.
just for our replication.
That's all we're looking for.
Right, that's probably.
But we don't know what that number
We
is.
need to-
We'll
we've
tell
asked-
them when we find out.
We've asked for them to give us that information, so once we get that, we'll establish the number.
But,
No, won't be in there.
As long as we make sure that we're the ones that can release the money off
Yeah,
there.
Well, no, then we'd be the only ones. This would be specifically for us, and
If
like,
that works, with the rules of the town, that we are the only ones that can draw
Right,
from
and we
that.
can structure it so that we can release.
we need an
part of it.
estimate from them.
I
Before the
understand we need a
We'll
figure.
provide that estimate,
Based on
Okay.
performance.
Yeah,
probably shooting a little high with 100,000,
I
but
don't
no.
know.
we'll provide
this
that
might
to
be
you.
an avenue to solve the problem, get
We'll
specific
provide you that
language you want,
estimate
but when
for-
it gets
of what we're talking
released and it's
about.
been
Okay.
performed.
We just want to be sure the replications are done,
So it's, so
You
it's
don't
just
want
for
it just,
replication,
you know-
understood, correct?
okay?
Bill, I had, because that was blank.
Yeah.
But it wasn't blank to infer that it was going to encompass every condition. It was, what I'm thinking, it was 32 and for 40.
Can we,
Yeah, just.
can we bring this up?
specifically regarding
It turns into this big nebulous.
But it should
And an
be
amount to be
another one
agreed
that
upon.
references buffer
Instead of
replication
solving the
features.
problem.
The ones that you've narrowed it down to 3 years. Yeah.
Yes, we can.
We need to make sure.
What this is
That's up to us.
Well, so they're gonna give us,
Let's just, because what I want to do is finish, what I'd like to do is to finish this, so in other words, we're
I
not
understand.
debating it. So in other words, if we go down amount of, we have a blank, we're going to come up, make sure you're satisfied, so the only, what the goal is here is at the next meeting, when we vote this thing, is just what's the number? If you're in agreement, Amy, we'll get you the stuff, I mean, what
And
this
I'll
is.
get it out to the commission.
Exactly.
Yep.
So in other words, if it's, to assure the wetlands replicants plan has been fully established on the site, period. All right? These funds will be returned to the applicant upon satisfactory completion. Instead of that, just say satisfactory completion of the work, and let's talk about the mechanism, as evidenced by, and what do we evidence it by, Mark? You write a letter?
Would be like stages of completion of different,
well, you get it,
gonna
it's
get
all
all
done
done
at
at
once.
Right.
So you
Well,
want it
be
based on
done.
after the plantings are installed, successfully installed, that
Yeah.
that step is done.
Yeah, you'd want, you're gonna have partial releases. I
but
mean,
they
you
have
wanna
to
wait
survive,
years.
yeah.
Yeah, we don't want that.
Yeah, so in other words,
I mean-
upon, successful installation of all the things as confirmed by the town consulting engineer, that's all.
But, and you're
No.
saying, but you'd want to do it as a bond, not as,
Yeah, it's a surety bond, correct.
Yes.
do you get that, Amy?
Yeah, our bylaw gives them an option to pick which one. I think they
Right.
prefer cash, but if they
Right.
want to do a bond, that's
Right.
fine.
Okay.
So if we say replicant's plan is evidenced by, in other words, completion of planting of all wetlands thing as confirmed by the town's consulting engineers.
But not all the money's gonna be returned, because just planning doesn't guarantee.
No, the whole purpose of the bond is to ensure
Sure
they
that it
do
goes
the
in, they do
replication,
the
not to
work.
ensure it survives.
Right.
To ensure they
So that all
do
the
it, and
work
it
is
gets
in.
signed off after it. You get a certificate of compliance after it's survived.
Right.
This is to ensure the work's done.
Yeah, we just don't want,
So we okay with that?
If it dies, it's
well,
another,
I am, but I don't
So
know about the
where's
rest.
the money if it dies?
Then they can't get a
They
certificate.
can't get a
certificate of
certificate, they have to come
Right.
back. And
But they have
can't settle
performed and planted, and that's the
unit.
whole point of the bond or the money. So if they dig the place up and they don't plant anything, that's what,
Get the money back.
right.
Yeah, it's just security for us, that's all.
All right, so
What
is
tomorrow,
everyone
right.
okay with that?
I'm good with it.
All right, so the last two things is, just on 45 and 46?
Yeah.
We just, there's no pride of authorship here, we just try to come up with something that made sense on,
Yeah. I gotta be quiet.
Yeah.
Oh, he keeps giving me dirty looks.
There's a little pride of authorship.
bless you.
God bless
The
you.
only, thing that I have a problem with is the vernal pool, it doesn't mention the signage.
Well, let's address one at a time.
Well, that wasn't in the
And it's not chairman,
signage.
it should be agent, or just commission.
I think commission.
I put chairman in there because I
I'm the one that-
felt that it was, I felt it was Frank that really felt strongly about it, so.
I'm the one
And
that
it's
gave
still a
the
little
orders.
nebulous in my mind as to exactly what.
And I don't mind doing that,
Here.
but I think, in case I can't make it out there, we probably should just say the commission, but I'll be happy to do that.
Or commission/agent,
We won't leave you out, I assure
because that
you.
way, if you guys aren't available, I can do it on your behalf.
You're always an agent of the commission, so, I mean, we could say that, but I would say you would still be included in that if they notify the commission and you went out there to represent the commission.
We won't do it alone.
Yeah,
You're in.
none of us may still be.
So you're going to put the commission, who are agents, right? Okay,
And then if none of us are here, you just start all over again.
that's right.
Exactly.
And so, just of note, so this, what we distributed last week, last Monday, was a draft, and that was pending comment from commissioners,
We're not done with this tonight?
of which I received comment from all, but we didn't incorporate their comments into the draft.
Well,
So
we
that
talk
was
about them right now?
Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Email that I sent.
Well, let's
So
look
then-
at 46, and then let's,
Well, I thought we were done with it.
we did 45.
It's almost exactly the same, but with
Okay.
respect to vernal pool.
They're making Frank a big deal again. They
All right.
gotta get the
Okay.
chairman's approval.
Yeah, yeah,
All right.
we're good.
So same language.
All right, so what other items?
Well, so I
Send
think,
these
be- all
out.
right, well, actually, so, Frank, I know you had mentioned certifying the vernal pool.
Right.
That was one, and then, was there anything else, Jeff?
Do we,
Anything else about,
Oh, that I wrote,
on your email?
mitigation, that was it, yeah.
yeah,
The way I felt about certification was, we're treating it as if it's a vernal pool. We're maintaining all the required setbacks. We're putting the signs in to warn people. We're doing the cleanup to restore the wildlife habitat. There doesn't seem to be any legal reason in my mind to actually certify. It doesn't get you anything more than we're giving you. So rather than have to wait until next year to go through the process, I mean, literally, we're probably past the 2018
Yeah, you are.
process.
right.
So,
Well, I mean, to us, it's one more guarantee that the vernal pool is protected.
of course.
And if it's not registered, it isn't protected.
Oh, it is protected, but it's not
It's just not known to the world that it's a vernal pool. It's not labeled as such.
Right.
But your
And I guess-
bylaw
I
protects it.
thought that was one of your ancestors, Frank, vernal pool.
We,
No one laughed.
no,
Frank Snow.
I'm trying to keep it straight.
Still doesn't
So-
say signage.
So my concern has been that part of this vernal pool is essentially unprotected because you guys control 2/3 of it or
Right.
whatever, and then there's a third of it that's not.
Right.
So by certifying it as a vernal pool, then it really puts an onus on the other portion of that to protect it further. And that's why I think it's important that it get done. And I don't think it's a cost, but I don't think it's a significant cost. And
Is that the last thing we have to do?
so.
If that's the last thing we have to agree to, we'll agree to it.
Well, just be careful. So we had that, and then the things that I had were the cleanup along the edge, the vernal pool, and then the Scituate Brook portion. And we've been trying to wrap our head around what that would be. And I know this gets more complicated as well, because I've been trying to find out what it would cost to do an initial study that will springboard us to do other pieces to eventually do a restoration of the Scituate Brook. And our first pass at this would be basically an inventory and analysis of the brook and whatnot. And I've been asking, I'm not in this business.
Mark did some
Well,
exploration.
I wanted to let Frank finish and hear what he found out.
Thank you.
Oh,
You may not.
Shut down.
So we were back and forth with all this. So of course, there's high numbers, low numbers, all this sort of stuff. I've gotten the feedback that about $50,000 was the number that we need to do this. And I don't know what that really gets us. I mean, I don't have a proposal. I don't have anything like that. I've heard lower numbers. I've heard higher numbers. So, and I also understand that there's money that's being worked with for the town for a whole myriad of things. So, you know, where this funding comes from, I'm not clear on either.
all right, so,
Because we're trying to operate as a town. We're not trying to have our own little fiefdom here and get our own little piece of the pie. We want to work with the whole town, you know, because there's other concerns for the town as well. I know there's studies of the sewer and water. I know that there's ball field. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's been considered, and I know you've been negotiating with that outside of our commission.
so let me just, Mark, I'll let you.
Okay, so I spoke with a nonprofit organization in the area about it, asked them if they were interested in it, and asked them if they had any idea what the scope would be and the cost would be. And they said it, pretty much what you just said. They said, you know, the cost it's hard to say, you know, without really getting into it and having someone do a simple first analysis of the river, understanding what it would take to do that sort of feasibility studies, I think what it would be.
Right.
You know, they said you could spend $5,000, you could spend $10,000, you could spend $50,000, you could spend $100,000. You know, it all depends on the level of data that you want to gather with this initial study.
Right.
The stream, as far as I could tell, and doing some research, it's about 2.5 miles long.
Right.
And it's got about a 1.7 square mile watershed.
It's a relatively small
Pretty
watershed.
small. It's pretty small. So I envision the scope of work would be similar to what you said. Someone would do an initial inventory, basically walk it beginning to end, identify any obvious environmental issues associated with it, identify the watershed area, what type of land uses are in the watershed area, and evaluate what type of restoration could be done. And that would be a sort of a combination field exercise and a combination research exercise on the desktop. 50,000 to me sounds high.
Okay.
Like, I think you could do a lot with less money than that for a stream of this size,
Okay.
in my opinion.
So, that group, did they have any clue at all as to what that might run for cost, Mark?
The number, no, they didn't get us, they weren't comfortable giving me a number.
Well, let me try and, I don't mean to interrupt you, Amy, go ahead.
Oh, well, I mean, there's only so many nonprofit organizations that do that type of stuff. So I may have spoken to the same
Right.
party
But,
along the same lines, and then the number floated to me was you could probably get a pretty good study for around 25. That was comprehensive, might involve some, you know, like DO measurements, temperature, same thing, baseline, look for constrictions, feasibility. But, I mean, so, it definitely depends on the parameter of the delineation that you're gonna do.
And if this is come, go ahead.
no, I don't see if I can bring this to closure, right?
Sure.
Is the concept always, as far as I understood it, is that this is a starting point for the town to figure out how you
We
get
can springboard into.
springboarded.
Yeah.
So, why not, we're willing right now to commit to $25,000 to springboard this, which I think is a fair offering to springboard this.
Yeah, I don't have I mean, I've never gotten a number, so to me, that seems fair, given where Mark is.
Yeah, but because what I'm saying is it's a starting process, and we'd say we'd give it, but we'd pay to the commission within 6 months of expiration of our
And then
appeal
we'll have to go
periods.
wrestle with the town if we want more money out of
That's
that
correct.
package.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
Thanks.
That's correct.
So that 25,000 is cash?
Yes, it is cash.
Pay within 6
Well,
months
we're
of
gonna hire
plan.
Mark.
Within 6 months of expiration of the appeal period, all the municipal appeal
Frank,
periods.
I
$1
want
bills.
to make a comment about the vernal pool, because why I want it, why it needs to be certified. Under the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, vernal pools within wetlands are not completely protected from destruction. However, if they're certified vernal pools that lie within wetland resource areas, they may not be altered under the Wetlands Protection Act, and therefore they're completely and totally protected.
All right, so,
There's a
let's
turtle
see if
there.
we can close this down, on these issues. All right, Penny, we gotta get back to your signs on the vernal pool, I haven't forgotten about that. All right, so if you want us to certify the vernal pool, we will certify the vernal pool.
Thank you.
If for the Scituate Brook, we'll provide $25,000 to the commission, care and custody of the commission, to have you guys springboard, you decide the initial scope, how you match up other matching funds or anything else with it. We'll pay within 6 months of expiration of appeal periods on municipal permits. I think that's, and Penny, you're looking for some signs on the vernal
It's
pool, right?
just it was omitted from this new order.
So
the signage.
taking a look at it, my thought was, I'm just making this up just for your feedback, 10 signs, say 12 inches by 18 inches, language to be approved by the commission, and they'd be placed anywhere,
Where you guys want them.
anywhere where you want them on, within the project property or town property.
Yeah, okay. No,
That
that
sounds
would,
good.
just so people, somebody's telling them, that's not something to wade through in the
Sure.
springtime.
Agreed.
Got it.
You know,
Understood.
it's a sensitive area.
Absolutely.
Look, don't go in it.
Running guard dog beyond this point.
That's right. I'll send my dog down.
Oh, that'd be good for the vernal.
Oh, yeah.
So, Mark, jumping back to this environmental monitor that was after 44, the old number 38 on page 5, did we come up with something?
Yeah, you ready? An independent third-party environmental monitor, paid for the applicant, shall oversee the interests of the Conservation Commission during construction of the restoration and replication areas on a bi-weekly basis. Period. Bi-weekly monitoring reports shall be submitted to the commission and shall incorporate observations by the planning board's engineer regarding site stability and erosion controls.
That's what
Pretty good, Mark.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, this whole time, so you're doing this whole time.
So I
That
want
was
to
good, because I can hear the beepers outside. I mean, everyone must agree, right? So-
before site
That's
stability.
getting certified.
Hold on a second, hold on. Amy, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, so I'd like to insert environmental remediation, comma, before site stability. So meaning that,
Yeah, they could
We get it.
incorporate the environmental remediation comments by the planning board's engineer.
right, so that's what, there's overlap in environmental monitors for remediation and for stability.
Yeah, so they'd basically be CCing the commission on any reports that are being done for the planning board as it
Yeah.
pertains to environmental remediation or site stability and erosion controls. Is that where you were going?
Very.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we should obviously take another pass at this.
No.
Another pass at what?
We'll see a clean version, look at it again, and make sure it reads right. To make sure we, I don't want to just commit based on these verbal discussions. I think we're pretty close.
Well, what,
But we need to see that, a clean draft and make sure that it reads right, everybody.
Well, assuming it reads the way Mark just read it, is that okay?
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But I think you're referring to the whole set of orders.
Yeah, and I mean, I want to see that written, not to move the just to make sure that it says what we want it to
Right, we're
say.
agreeing in principle on these, and then you can take a cut, and if you see a
But
comma or a
after
word
discussing it
that,
for
Yeah.
an hour and a half, maybe, you know what I mean? We
Yeah.
want to actually read it.
All right, but the whole purpose is to bring this to closure.
And I'd say we're pretty close.
Right.
Sounds like we've made a lot of ground here.
So, are there any issues, well, good, if you had, good, Amy, if there are other comments, I'd like to know, because I'd like at the next meeting, if we reviewed all this, believe me, we'll say we're okay, I'd like to vote it
close it and vote it.
I'd like to get the rewrite well
Understand?
in advance of the meeting.
He's
so
agreeing to
that-
that.
So that way, read it,
But what
if
you're
it
saying is
isn't come,
that
we could give it to you
this
in
gets-
our two.
This gets written out, so it's all clear. We can check the i's, dot the t's, make sure we're there. Gets distributed to the commission, but the time that the applicant comes before the board, that we
They're
would
expecting a
close
vote.
and vote this together, which,
Right.
given where we are with this, I don't see that there's a problem
Okay.
with doing that.
As long as we get this in advance and have an
Can we-
opportunity to review it.
If we do that, this gets rewritten,
Yes.
at the next meeting, close and issue these orders.
But we're gonna get a number from them
Yes.
with regard to the mitigation.
Yes.
Yep. And we'll incorporate that into the next.
Yeah.
To that piece that's
Rewrite.
coming out to us.
And if,
All
and
right?
if we just spend a short time, Amy, any of the other things we discuss, if there's comments, any of the board members, if you just tell us what those are, I'm sure right now we can, I'm sure they're copacetic. I just want to make sure that we got it so we know what we're,
Is there anybody in the room, I mean, this has been a lot of stuff, I know that there's only maybe a face or two that has a concern for this project, but any other comments you'd like to make? I mean, we're obviously bringing this down to the wire.
Well, I'm a little concerned with the water.
And just, what, your name and,
G29,
Yeah.
I sent you some pictures of what happens between March and May.
right.
We already closed the meeting.
Had the planning board commented all,
I
Bill?
haven't heard anything from them.
yeah, all these things have been, all that's all been submitted to the planning board. I was at the planning board meetings, and the stormwater engineers and everyone is setting the stormwater conditions in this and the stormwater permit, which we're gonna bring up on Thursday. And that'll be voted and done on Thursday.
So the planning board is meeting Thursday,
The planning board has an issue, which I won't get into, but basically they have to vote it on Thursday.
so this is an area along Ermine,
No,
No,
behind
Norwell,
Yeah,
behind Norwell Ave.
the most northeast corner of the
Right.
project, I would say.
And I don't have a plan here, I don't know whether you guys can comment on that.
We've already commented many times, but actually, the planning board is acting as the stormwater authority, so all the information's been assorted to them, all the information's been given to Horsley Witten. They've reviewed it, and the decision will reflect it.
There's been a very thorough and comprehensive stormwater review of every point that water exits the site. And that has been reviewed by the peer review of Horsley and Witten over the course of this project to maintain or even reduce wherever possible the stormwater leaving the site.
Bill, have you, not to pass the buck, but have you had any conversation with the planning board agent or anything about this specific?
there's one.
Next meeting's what, 17th?
Thursday.
This Thursday.
Yeah.
Is it this Thursday?
I think you might be better served, though, if you can, to try to call or come in and talk to the agent directly in a room where she could pull out the plan, take a look at this, and say, because we've discussed it in certain areas, areas headed towards Marion Road. There's been different discussions about drainage going off into different areas, but our commission is really dealing more with the wetlands issues and pieces like that, but we were part of the stormwater process.
Yeah.
Well, I feel being built up,
Oh, by the way.
that we could be getting more.
I understand what you're saying, and,
The land is built in.
right, but there should be a bunch of calculations from their engineers that show how they're addressing it. And I would just suggest that you get with Karen Joseph in that office and see if she can't open up the plan and look at that specific area with you and say, this is how it's been addressed. And I don't mean to somebody else, but we're
I know what you do.
Right. Yes, sir. Anybody else for Toll Brothers? Okay.
Well, let me ask you a question, because from the commission members, no, I just want to, if there are any, are all the commission members, the comments you gave to Amy,
after tonight's discussion, are we okay with this as written, or do we need to go over whatever the other comments? Because some of them might have been in the context of questions or clarifications.
No, the comments that they had were that they liked them as they were, so.
With what was, with the addition of what we've already discussed.
Okay, so we're good.
Yeah.
All right, great, that's great.
Except for,
But,
all right.
No.
Okay, everybody, there's a few other people here in the room that would love to get out of here tonight.
all right,
I told Greg Morse this was gonna be 25 minutes, so.
Oh, you lied, you lied.
all right.
I make a motion to continue Toll Brothers to May 21st at 6:20.
Second.
All in favor?
Hey, I'd like to thank the commission for all of the hard work. Thank you. I know it's been a ton of work, and Amy and
Hey, don't
Carol.
be too gushing until the next meeting.
I will. And for that cash, you guys take Bitcoin, don't you?
Yeah.
Do you want the correct spelling of my last name?
CAFC, right?
The rest of you can all get out of jail free.
Don't forget your
How about Swain, 31 Swan, 31 Common Street? Yes. Sorry.
We can do that anytime.
Oh, yeah, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I make a motion that we continue Town of Scituate, 2632 Gardner, to June 4th at 6:20.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Swan, 31 Common Street.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Good evening. For the record, Gregory Morse, Registered Engineer, Morse Engineering. This was a continued notice of intent for a single-family home at 31 Common Street. At the last meeting, I presented the plan to you. It's a raise and reconstruct project. There's an existing home at the site. We would be taking down that home and constructing a new one. The commission had requested a peer review of the wetland line at the property. The commission hired Steve Ivis of Ivis Environmental to go out and review the wetland line. Steve had a couple of additional flags that he hung at the site. He also hung 2 additional flags out where the vernal pool is at the property. We added his new flagging locations to the plan. We've updated the buffer zones appropriately to that. The scope of work is identical to what we presented to you before. It involves taking down the existing home. The existing home is inside of the 50-foot buffer zone. The new house is 80 feet from the wetlands. It involves abandoning the existing septic system. The existing septic system is inside of the 50-foot buffer zone. The new one is outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. And we're maintaining the existing lawn. The existing lawn is inside the 50-foot buffer zone, and it would remain in its current condition. We did add to this a small buffer enhancement area. We're proposing a 10-foot wide buffer planting area near those additional flags that Mr. Ivis hung. I'd turn it over if there's any questions or comments. I can get into the technical details.
Penny?
No, I'm very happy with it. It looks good to me.
I'm good.
Good.
I think it looks good, too.
Amy?
Yeah, I mean, I think it looks good. They reflected the changes that the peer review consultant identified, so that's good. Added a buffer. I mean, I would say, all in all, it's probably an improvement to the site with a new septic system. It does have Board of Health approval, so
Major improvement.
probably an order of conditions would be in line with the project, with perhaps maybe a condition on monitoring the buffer that they're enhancing to make sure that that takes.
Sure.
Yeah, is there anybody in the audience that wants to speak to this one? That's it?
And there's grading that goes in the buffer area,
Right.
but.
But that's also on a pre-existing law.
Yeah, it's pre-existing, disturbed, and they are giving some buffer enhancement in exchange for the encroachment into your no disturb area. So, I mean, strictly, it doesn't meet the Scituate bylaw, but since it's disturbed area, you can take enhancement
Right.
in exchange. So.
It's a big improvement.
Yeah.
Especially the septic.
I like it the first time.
Yeah.
Good. I'd take a motion.
Anybody out there now? I make
Anybody? I
a
think I
motion
already
to
asked.
close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Pete, 62 Glades Road? He's gone.
My name is Frank Westgate. I did the survey and most of the plan work on this project. I'm going to ask you to be patient with me tonight. I forego my nap, forego a full length. I miss my nap in order to be here at 6:20. All right? And when that happens, I'm a lot older than I act, and I get real dyslexic. All right, so please be patient with me, all right?
Sure.
I'm assuming that everybody has a copy of the drawing.
I've seen it. I
Yeah,
don't know if
okay.
you have a- we'll be good.
All right.
You'll be fine. Is there anybody here in the audience that has an interest in this project? All right, so there's no need to, you can just keep it right there.
Okay. We had to go, this hearing was continued because we had to make our peace with the Board of Health.
Right.
They had to approve a number of waivers,
Yep.
and they did. And now we're working out the details with Jenna, with the agent. All right? So that's where we stand with the Health Department.
So you haven't got Board of Health approval yet?
We have tentative approval. There's just a few details to work out between myself and the agent.
So there's
Okay.
no,
Yes.
All right,
So,
I think we could close.
yes,
Yeah, I was my understanding from Jen that
Good.
yeah.
Okay.
Frank, was there any need to put erosion control around any piece of this?
I don't see the need. I mean, we're looking at a sandy beach, and the material, some material will come out of there, probably a couple of truckloads, and be carted off, and then new material will come in. But unless we get a real windy hurricane-type day, I don't see any danger of and the erosion wouldn't happen because everything is at an elevation where it would stay right within that site that they're excavating. If you take a look at the profile, you'll see that everything is below grade. But, you know, if you have a policy of wanting hay bales or some kind of fabric to outlining the area between
Well, there isn't a lot, like you say, I mean,
No.
between Glades Road, there's a concrete retaining wall, there's the house.
Yeah.
So there's very little area that they can really
Yeah.
go,
Right.
just,
Okay.
pretty good with it.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I'm good.
Okay,
I make a motion to close.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Well,
Okay.
sorry that,
Well, it can't be much fun for you either, because you must put in a lot of time.
this one's going better than the last couple, so.
All right, well, thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Swolnick, here, how you doing?
Skolnick.
You're getting to watch government at work all night tonight, huh?
It's date night.
Oh, what a day, you lucky girl.
Robin, Michelle Skolnick for 4 Postscript Lane, and we were here at your last meeting, and you were prepared to close, but wanted to wait for comment for Board of Health.
Yeah.
Went to Board of Health last week, and they approved, so now we're back to say hi.
I'm all set.
Anybody in the audience to this one? No. Okay.
I make a motion to close.
Sorry that takes so long, but at least it's
But-
good news.
Yep.
I will second it, and I will also tell you, you have a very supportive neighbor. I went down and was looking at your house, and the person across the street spent a half hour telling me how much it's needed to be done, and please support them, and
Excellent. We appreciate it.
It was my mother, wasn't it?
no, this was on the other side.
All right, we have a motion to close. We have a
Second.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you hustle, you can make less calls somewhere.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
Good night. Plumbing, 7 Surfside Road. Remove garage.
Do you have a spiel for this?
Yeah, I do.
They want to move it.
On May 7th, 2018, the Town Hall Situate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 4 of the Massachusetts General Laws and Section 30700, Town of Situate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of John and Diane Fleming to relocate and elevate a single-family house on concrete piers and relocate a garage on top of a concrete foundation wall on property located at 7 Surfside Road, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Paul Marabito from Ross Engineering Company, representing the applicant, John and Diane Fleming. They own the existing dwelling at number 7 Surfside Road. It's on a lot that's 26,879 square feet. The house received severe damage during the nor'easters back in March. And they're proposing to relocate the house and the garage to a new location shown on the proposed conditions plan. The resource areas are, on the ocean side, there's a stone revetment. There's also a piece of the old seawall that was there. This stone revetment here is in a state of disrepair. It's starting to come apart. There's also a top of coastal bank. The land slopes from the ocean up to the edge of the wand, and from there, the land slopes back towards Surfside Road. This is the old Sawyer house, and a previous owner added a garage in this area here to the home. This garage is going to be separated from the main house and relocated in this location here, that will be placed on a reinforced concrete wall with breakout panels. And the house is going to be moved out of the 50-foot buffer. This is the 50-foot buffer zone in here to the coastal bank, and this is the proposed, and this is the existing buffer zone to the coastal bank, the 50-foot buffer. So we're going to be moving the house from approximately this location all the way back into here. But they're doing is moving as far back as they can from the ocean. The existing driveway comes in from Surfside Road. It's a gravel drive, and it wraps around the side of the garage. That'll be shortened to this location. It'll still be gravel. There's a silt sock around the house here. This house will be placed on individual concrete piers, reinforced concrete piers. We do have the decal sheet in there for the piers. Structural work is being done by Livermore Engineering. There's no proposed changes in the grade of the land. Again, the elevation of the land at the top of the coastal bank is approximately elevation 18. It slopes down to 17 to 16 and 16 out to the street. The lawn area that has been lost in portions of the buffer zone will be replaced as part of a new landscaping for the house. The height of the house is going to be 4 to 5 feet above the existing ground, which does meet the FEMA flood zone requirements. The flood zone is elevation 16. That's the AE zone. The velocity zone is 16 as well, which is odd because the elevation of the land is 17 here. That means the velocity zone is a foot into the ground. Doesn't make sense. And the AE zone is 17, but the overwash did come into this area, so they elected to pick it up enough so they could work under the house future need be. The house will be on town sewer, serviced by town water, and that's the extent of the proposed work, so I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Penny?
No,
How much further back, Paul, is the house actually moved?
How much further back?
Yeah, in other words, where is it now compared to where it's going to be?
This is the 50-foot buffer here.
Isn't there?
This is the 50-foot buffer. That house is going back.
Yeah, right now the house is in the
It's
middle of
going
it.
back about 35 feet.
oh, I was gonna say 25, 30.
Yeah.
25.
Oh, I can see it's better. I was just
No,
curious
it's
as to
a-
how much better.
Well, you look at the garage,
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the colors, you can see that.
yeah,
I have no question it's back. I was just curious as to how much it
Yeah.
amounts to.
Yeah, this
I'm
is 50
surprised
feet.
that got hit
line's
like
50
that.
feet, but
wow.
This line is right here.
Looking at the scale, I'd guess around 40 feet.
It's about 35 to 40 feet.
Okay, thanks.
That house has been there for so long,
Yeah, thanks.
That's
it really
Bill
does.
Sawyer House, that was built
Yeah,
1920, I think.
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
It's a
I'm
substantial
Good.
house.
That's, I'm just curious.
No, it looks good.
Lisa?
All positive.
Yeah, so, project's pretty straightforward, I would say, it appears to meet the requirements of the Wetlands Protection Act and the Scituate bylaw. So I would say the order of conditions would be doable here.
So the only, and I don't disagree, I'm just wondering, Amy, sometimes I don't see the need to review anything like that, but we're gonna accept like a top of coastal bank.
That's the first of zero will break.
On this particular project,
Yeah.
I think it's pretty straightforward, and
Okay.
they're not adding fill or changing the
Yep.
grades,
Okay,
going up on piers, so I think that this is acceptable at this.
right.
And they're moving away.
And
Yeah, no, no, I'm-
yeah.
all of that's good. The
We're
only thing
moving
that
at
we
a
want
lot
to
about
be careful
50.
of is accepting
I got you.
a wetlands or delineation without, which we can do.
Right,
Um,
yeah, no, we're accepting this delineation for this project, yes,
Okay.
in this case. Good. I mean, and I think that this is, from what I'm observing, is that this is a trend, is to retreat
Right,
from the coastline, so I think we'll be seeing more and more of these.
sure.
I think it's pretty straightforward.
Okay. Well, it's nice that they're maintaining the house. It's a beautiful home.
It's a
and
gorgeous
Rather than
house.
raise it, it's a lot of work to get this picked up and moved back, but it's still it's a real nice feature down there, that's for sure.
It's gorgeous.
Okay. Anybody in the audience?
I make a motion.
Sure.
Oh,
You want to speak to it? Thank you. You're not opposed?
I make a motion to close.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Great. Sorry you had to sit through all that. Your orders won't be nearly as difficult.
Thank you.
All right. And then we have
Do you remember the last time?
COCs.
certificates of compliance.
Yeah. mm.
Okay, so there are 4 certificates of compliance on the docket, and my recommendation, or based on information that I received from engineers and applicants, would be to issue these
Them all.
certificates of compliance. I think you could make one motion to issue all 4.
We don't even have to vote on it.
We were in agreement with you.
We're in agreement.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I don't know why, but we never vote on these.
Okay.
That's great.
No, we're good.
Yeah, I mean, I can give you a little back
No.
history on it's,
Ah,
one of
it's
them's from 01, one's from 9, one's from 17. You just approved it was a septic upgrade from the fall, so.
She's thinking this is too easy and fast.
Well, it's almost 9.
We like 'em.
That easy.
Now I'm thinking, I wonder what the score of the Celtics game is.
Oh, they're losing. They're losing.
I'm taping it.
Okay.
Oh, I have no clue.
All right. Okay, do we have anything else?
Yeah, I make a motion, we accept the minutes of March, I can't
19th.
see.
19th.
19th, as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
All good, I think.
Do we want to talk about any stuff, or should I just
Do we
send
have
an email
anything that
report?
we need?
Well, we have a lot going on.
Yeah.
I mean, I could start coming through and listing off stuff if you would like.
I think we're,
I mean, there's nothing particularly urgent,
I spent
although
enough time here today.
I was, okay. We'll take it up separately then. Sounds good.
Yeah, thank you, and not to, it's all important, I get it, and just, I think we're,
Your
We're
glass
fried.
is half full
Yeah.
tonight, yeah.
we're good.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Not yet, but it will
I
be.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry, Frank.